Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is the hump day edition of the Rodcast. Thank you guys for joining us. Lots to get into on the show this time of year. We're talking about the college football playoff rankings. The latest edition, the latest installment came out last night. We'll dive into it. Talk about where the Longhorns are ranked in the latest college football playoff rankings. We'll also get into the Longhorns' next opponent, their upcoming opponent, the Kentucky Wildcats. We'll talk about that a little bit. Also, one of the Longhorns' upcoming opponents, the Texas A&M Aggies, their head coach had a bit of a Freudian slip yesterday with the media. We'll talk about that and get into it coming up a little bit later on in this segment. We'll also dive into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. A GM fired yesterday. We'll talk about that because the Jets continue to be a mess. We'll dive into it. We'll also talk Cowboys coming up. We talk Texans coming up. We'll do that next hour and dive into some NFL discussion. There's also your usual favorites on the show. We got Raj Rant. We got Who Said That? What the Facts, What the Stats? We got Off the Record. We got the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the Day loaded on a hump day edition of the Rodcast. Thank you guys for joining us. Before we do any of that, let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid, but pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It's our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It's Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, brother?
Ready to go on a Wednesday morning. Got that chill coming in this morning, so ready to get it going. And enjoy a day. Spurs got a win last night with all their players, with all most of their top scorers out.
Nice.
So that was fun to watch last night on TNT. And then get ready for the week of football. The more I look at this Kentucky game, the more I'm a little
man.
Yeah, it's a trap game, but I'm looking forward to it.
I don't feel like the trap game as much. I just don't feel like Kentucky's good enough, but that's the whole point of a trap game.
Exactly.
I'm literally getting sucked into the trap.
Exactly.
I'm falling for the trap, literally, as we speak. I'm falling
so
for
that's
the
what
trap.
I'm saying is I feel like I get the concept of it. I think this Texas team has had a few of those already this season. They've handled it pretty well. I think this is gonna be a fun game on senior day. Or what do we the farewell game?
Farewell, yeah. What you call it? Seaway coined it the farewell night.
I believe it was the farewell game and farewell night. So it'll be. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday. So just getting ready to get through the week and get to the weekend.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Football filled the weekend too, and we'll talk about a lot of it coming up on here on the show.
Yeah, and then we got the college football playoff rankings came out, and then you just kind of see. Like now it really is that point of watching at the end of the season of instead of like only watching 4 teams, it only really mattered about like maybe 5-6 teams at the end of the season. Now there's a whole bunch of games that you have to watch because, where it goes. Boise State now is getting a bye.
It matters. Yeah, that's crazy to me. Yeah, I'm with you. That's a great point about it. Used to be the focus will be on like 10, 8 to 10 teams. Now it has expanded the focus. Now you're focusing on like 15 to 20 teams and stuff like that. Potentially teams that could play spoiler. Who teams are going to play in their conference championships, all that. Like I'm with you, it does matter even more now. It does feel like that, and I think ultimately the ratings will be the beneficiary. I think the ratings will be through the roof for this thing, and ultimately, I do think they'll expand the playoffs to 14, 16, whatever. It's going to expand, no doubt. There's no question about it. Whenever the contract is up. I don't know when that happens, but I'm just saying in the future, there's no doubt it ain't staying at 12. It ain't.
No,
it didn't stay at 4.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's an abject failure of every game is 70-0, which I don't see happening.
That's true. And the ratings bomb, which I don't think that's going to happen either. I think you'll get competitive games, and I think the ratings will be really good.
I'm definitely there's definitely games that I would not have normally, like Tennessee at this time when you're like, well, Tennessee's kind of out of it, but they're not. They're right there, so you're still watching a Tennessee game, seeing if they're in it. You have the SEC right now with no divisions. I kind of like the no division thing when we saw. I know as much as people like the old school division thing, it does make it more interesting now because it used to be you'd have there's 6 teams vying for one spot and the other side is it's a 5 and 4 team.
Totally agree with that.
And they're just in because that side is bad and the other side is really good. So you're worried about one side, but we all know they're going to play and they're going to play a team they're going to mollywop because that side of the division so good. Now, basically any way the SEC championship plays out, it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, and
no,
so
it will be two really good teams, or the best teams. No,
there's a lot of it that I'm pretty excited about as we get down the stretch where it is, way more games that are going to be fun to watch. We'll be talking about them with my co-host. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is a new Rodfather of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
I appreciate that. I'm not sure we know exactly, what the committee's up to yet. They're definitely up to something. They always are. They always are up to something. But it does feel like because this Big Ten influence, the heavy Big Ten influence with 4 out of the top 5 teams, be it from the Big Ten, which we know, honestly, some of that will sort itself out. Indiana, Ohio State, that kind of thing. That's been the case for a while. So are they just that high on the Big Ten? Or because I think ultimately you're going to get 4 from the Big Ten and 4 from the SEC. I've been saying it for a while. You're going to get 8 teams represented from each. You can kind of sort that out however you will, but I believe ultimately that's how it plays out. For Texas, all that matters is keep winning, and you don't have to have the conversation. If Texas loses, and this is why that Texas A&M game is setting up to be an absolute barn burner.
Yes.
First game, rekindling the rivalries in a decade and a half, and if the Aggies take care of business versus Auburn, and they ain't no gimme, all right. Nope. They got to take care of business versus Auburn, but if they do, and Texas takes care of business in this potential trap game, as we're talking about against Kentucky, man, that is setting up to be a monster game with SEC title implications. And just talk about bragging rights on the line. It may be, you got to go back to, I think, like 1975, the last time both of these teams ended up with double-digit wins. If the Aggies win, they go into it with 9. Texas would already have its 10th win. You can make the argument it's the biggest game in Texas A&M history. I got to go back and see where they were ranked in like 1975, whenever.
I mean, and Texas still technically, if they lost that game, could still make the playoffs, be in the picture for the national championship.
They could. It's just going to be the committee would have to help you a lot.
But the switch of that is A&M, if they win now, has a shot to get in because they're, I think, like the 5th or 6th team out. But if they were to pick up a big win over Texas and then go to the SEC championship game, if they win that, then they're in.
Boost them. Yes, no doubt.
So
I'm with you. It would boost them in. There's no question. But if you're Texas, you don't want to be in the 10 that 2-loss club right now in the SEC, which we'll get it because right now it's what you got 4 teams in it, and you could get more teams in. You don't want to be in that group because then they got to start looking at your resume. They look deep at your resume at that point. And then your resume is questionable compared to some of the others. We'll talk about it, but I've said it before. They're gonna justify getting Texas in. It's gonna upset if Texas loses to Texas A&M. I'm not saying they're gonna lose, but if butts, candies, nuts. If they lose Texas A&M, end up with 2 losses, they're gonna find a way to get Texas in. Yeah. It's gonna be the magic bullet theory of college football playoff committee, right? It's gonna be kind of their magic bullet theory. They'll be like, yeah, we looked at this. It turns out this data point is bigger than we thought. Look at this data point. Look at this one. Right now, we don't know what data points that they consider really important because they are kind of weaving all over the place. And they're like, oh, well, we like their defense. Oh, look the way they played the last 3 weeks. That's pretty good. And they're like, okay, I don't know exactly what you're looking at. I know you're looking at several data points. I think if Texas is a 2-loss team, I think they'll find a data point that will allow them to justify, this is, and like I said, to y'all, it may feel like a magic bullet kind of thing where it's like, where the hell did that come from? I think they want Texas in. They do. Unless Texas gets blown out. That's a different discussion. And I don't think any of us see them getting blown out because of that defense. Texas is going to be in a game because of the defense. It's going to be, if they lose, it's going to be a tight loss. I know you say that about the Georgia game, but I think going down the stretch, I don't think A&M's defense is really good, but I don't know if they're what Georgia is, but they could get blown out. Anything could happen. I doubt Texas gets blown out. If they're a 2-loss team, I still think Texas is in. I could just be biased. Could be homerism.
No, I'm with you.
It's even, right now, looking at people are talking about the resume of Texas and the quality wins. Oh, you know what? The prime example of that is they looked at key wins. I guess that's what they call quality wins. Yeah. Key wins. their key wins for Texas, Vandy, which is understandable, right?
Yeah.
Even though Vandy is not ranked in these latest rankings, I don't think. And Arkansas.
Yeah, it's not great.
They got Arkansas as a quality win. And everybody was like, what? How did Arkansas become how is that? What? Excuse me? That's a quality win? Yeah, damn right it is. That's the key. They call it key win. It's a key win. And so people are saying, well, that Arkansas, the loss for Tennessee, it's a bad loss for Tennessee, but it's a good win for Texas.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how is that possible? They're going to find a data point. I'm telling you.
Yeah, they'll find something.
Because they want Texas in. And I'm not mad about it. It's a TV show.
No,
they want to get TV products.
I get also that there's going to be a certain part of them that say, well, we don't want to, in 1 week, drop Texas from 10 spots. Say they're 3, and we're going to put them now at 13.
What are you talking about if they lose?
If they lose. Drop them 10 spots with a loss.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, I got you.
So, as long as they stay, as long as you're still up at 3.
Stay in, exactly. You can put them anywhere as long as they end up sliding in.
They slide down, and they're like, well, you slid to 10. So it's 7 spot. Now
that's the punishment.
You're at the back now.
Hopefully that's enough to avoid the blowback from everybody. It's like, what the hell are you gonna steal that? Because I'm telling you, they're trying to get the best. They want the best teams, but if it's a bunch of 10-2s and they can justify getting the sexiest 10-2s or the ones that get the most ratings, they'll do that. That's what they'll do. And Texas is that. They got that working for them. But you don't want to have to deal with that. Just beat the damn Aggies, and you won't have to deal with any of that. But if you lose to the Aggies, we'll have to have that conversation. We'll have to have the conversation about Texas' resume and quality wins, and you just don't have enough of them. I don't know if the Texas really has any of them truly a quality win. Other teams that are currently ranked, but that's the case for. Indiana's like that too. Indiana's got their strength of schedule is bad, but they've taken care of business, and that's all you can do. All you can do is beat the teams on your schedule.
No, I know Penn State's not great.
Penn State's not great, but at least I think it's better. I got to look at the quality wins for Penn State.
That's what I'm trying to go look at.
Yeah. I don't. Actually, that's a great point. I'm not sure they have that many quality wins. So
Penn State beat an Illinois team.
Oh yeah, Illinois is ranked right now.
That's your only ranked win, I believe.
Yeah, that's 25th, I believe, right now.
Illinois. So that's basically a Vandy win. It's roughly a Vandy win.
Yeah, that's the only quality win they have.
Yeah, so they're in a similar boat, and they lost to again Ohio State, which is one of those top teams. So they fall in the same kind of bandwagon of, well, you lost to a top team, so we're not going to knock you down so much.
I know. And then what if Ohio State loses to Indiana? They'll still lose to a top team. Yeah. But then they'll have 2 losses. And then what do you do about that?
And Ohio State lost to Oregon. So they didn't draft. So all the Big
That's what I'm saying. They lost.
They'll be losing each other's, and they only lost to each other. So they're all fine.
That's why I feel like the committee's up to something. They keep these Big Ten teams ranked real high. And then, ultimately, if they lose to each other, the argument is, well, they lost to a top 5 team. Yeah. And it's like, well, you can't. How much are you going to penalize them for losing to a top 5 team? And then it's a close loss. Like it's, the Ohio State lost to Oregon, like last play kind of thing.
Yes. So it's weird. I believe that the person in charge of the committee is Michigan's AD. So there is people that believe that there's some shenanigans in that world. But
I'm sure Ohio State people are losing their mind if that's the case. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even get into that. Yeah.
Well, no, but there's a Big Ten bias. Is what they say.
Big Ten bias. That's true.
Which it's fine for Texas because they're like, look, those guys came in here. We watched them. They're really good. They whooped us.
No, that's true. And that's why, Ward Manuel, right? He's the guy. I believe he's the AD you're talking about from Michigan, the administrator. And he's okay. So when he was asked about the 4 SEC teams that are all 8-2, right? This is what Texas, you want to stay out of this group of these 8-2 teams. Because if you end up with 2 losses, you'll be in this group. And he's asked about that basically the 4 teams that have all are 8-2 that have beaten each other head to head: Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. The reporter said, my interest is specifically in Tennessee. They're the fourth of those four. What's the weak point does the committee think is in Tennessee's resume that they would be the fourth out of those four teams? Like, why did you put them so much lower? What Manuel said, well, one, they just had a loss to Georgia, and they had the loss at Arkansas. It's really splitting hairs. They have a great offense, great defense. They play hard. The committee just had a hard time. You're talking about four really good teams when you look at Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Tennessee. I think the committee, we debated it, as I said earlier, quite a bit as it came down to how we saw those teams, but they have beaten each other at different times. So we have to look at Alabama the last three games, particularly the two before they played Mercer. They won in dominant fashion, and we really were impressed with their win at LSU 2 weeks ago. It is close. There are a lot of conversations. Well, we'll continue to monitor the performance of these teams as the season progresses towards the end. So now the beauty, he's telling you the beauty pageant matters.
Yeah.
He's just telling you right there, you got to look good while you're doing it. He just said it.
No, and look, there's always been a point, and I know, this is when the semantics come up and everybody starts going through and going, well, in week 3, we did this. And you go, we've known for as many years as college football has been around, late games matter more. Well, what have you done for me lately has always been an issue in college football. It's just always been there of, a big win late means more than a big win early, and a big loss late means more than a big loss early. It's always been there, just because the way the polls work and people going up and down. So for Tennessee, I get they do have an argument fully, but if you start to lose now at the end of the season, it's worse for you.
I know, but we're talking about Texas losing potentially hypothetically the last game.
I agree.
And I'm still saying Texas getting it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that it is. But that loss,
because I agree with you. You're right. That's usually the case.
I think, but again, when I say it for Texas, if they're number 3 and they lose that game, I don't think they're dropping 10 spots. And that's what you would have to say is you go, I think you dropped 7 spots, which is a pretty far drop.
Yeah, you can drop. Yeah.
But the biggest question is, if A&M was to beat you and then win the SEC championship, are they the team that knocks you out? I think that would be your scariest point, was if A&M wins the next 3 games and they win out, they beat Texas, they go to the SEC championship, they win out. I think they take your spot.
Well, they definitely, they could. Yeah, they can end up bumping them out.
So,
I still think they found a way. I don't know. I think it'll be some gymnastics. Like I said, it'll be magic bullet type theory stuff. But I think they'll try to find a way to justify it, to put them in there if they can do it. But you're right. That would be that'd be sweet for Aggies too, if they could somehow end up bumping out Texas into the college football playoff for the first 12-team playoff. All right, we'll talk about that. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about the Texas A&M matchup, because Mike Elko was asked about it, and a bit of a Freudian slip for the coach. That's all right. He was, and it was almost perfectly timed too. And the question, and we'll give it to you coming up here after the Horn headlines. But we'll come back and talk about the college football playoff a little bit more. But first, let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Mavericks bought the Pelicans 132-91 last night. 8 Mavericks finished with double-digit points as Dallas shot over 50% from the field for the game. The Spurs picked up a 110-104 win over the Thunder. With the Spurs' top 3 scorers out for the game, Keldon Johnson went off in the second quarter and ended up with 22 points to lead the way for the Spurs. Both teams are now 1-1 in NBA Cup play. Tonight, the Rockets take on the Pacers in Houston. Tags women's basketball will host their annual 40 Acres Field Trip Day today with upwards of 5,000 kids in attendance from local schools as the Longhorns take on Tarleton State. The game takes place at 11 a.m. at the Moody Center. In college football, the latest college football playoff rankings were released with no change to the top 5, leaving Texas at number 3. After BYU's loss, Boise State has now claimed the last bye as the higher-ranked conference champion. Tennessee, SMU, Colorado, and Clemson are your first 4 out of the playoffs as it stands today. And in the NFL, the Jets have fired general manager Joe Douglas after 5+ seasons. The move comes 6 weeks after the Jets fired coach Robert Saleh and have gone 1-5 in that span. Bill Savage is now the interim GM, and that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Appreciate those. All right, getting back to the college football playoff before we get into the Texas A&M conversation. Yeah, the most intriguing I think development in the latest installment, though, is that Boise State getting the bye. There's no doubt about it. And yeah, because when everybody reads the latest, the rules from the college football playoff for the latest 12-team playoff, the assumption was that the highest ranked conference champion would be from a power conference.
Yes.
But that's not necessarily the case. And in the latest college football playoff rankings, that came to fruition. That materialized with Boise State being a higher ranked conference champion. And Boise, and that being from the group of 5 or group of 6. Got to keep up with it. The group of 6. So that to me is really interesting. And then the latest seeding, because the rankings are different than the seeding. The latest playoff seeding would have BYU and BYU had a precipitous drop. That drop that Patrick was just talking about. They went from 6 to 14.
Yeah.
After their loss over the weekend, Georgia went from 12 to 10. That was another shift, and Arizona State wasn't even ranked, and Arizona State ended up, after that big upset win, ended up number 21 in this latest college football playoff rankings. Longhorns at 3, behind Ohio State at 2, and then Oregon at 1, ahead of Penn State at 4, and Indiana at 5, Notre Dame at 6, Bama at 7, Miami 8, Ole Miss 9, Georgia 10, Tennessee at 11, Boise State at 12. And so because of the way the seeding has actually worked out, or at least the seeding works out here in the latest rankings, BYU and Ohio State would face off a 12 versus a 5 seed, Alabama and Notre Dame a 9 versus an 8, Georgia versus Penn State an 11 versus a 6, and then Ole Miss versus Indiana a 10 versus a 7. Your buys would be number 1 Oregon, and they end up facing the winner of that 9-8. Number 2 Texas facing the winner of that 10-7, Ole Miss Indiana. Number 3 Miami, which would get the bye, and they'd face Georgia or Penn State, the 11-6, and then Boise State, who would end up facing, Ohio State. If that ends up happening, Ohio State would get a very favorable path to the college football playoff.
I mean, the reality is I think whoever wins the Big 12 championship jumps Boise State.
I would assume so, but I don't know.
So we're assuming right now it's going to be BYU and Colorado.
It's Colorado, yeah.
And so either BYU or Colorado, most likely because of that last win, can jump those last couple of spots and get ahead of Boise State. Boise State plays 2 below 500 teams the rest of the way. They're not playing anybody. So they can fall down with just on the fact of their strength of schedule. And so I think at the end of the day, as long as BYU doesn't lose again or Colorado lose before the Big 12 title game, I think you're pretty easy that one of those teams can just walk in and they'll give it to them because they're a way better sell in that second round matchup.
BYU's got a tough game coming up.
I think I have Arizona State.
First Arizona State, yeah. See, so Arizona State's playing good football. We just talked about Arizona State getting ranked. So you're right, down the stretch for some of these teams, it's pretty much their fate's already sealed. A good point about Boise State.
Well, and I mean, if Arizona State knocks off BYU, then they play Colorado for the Big 12 championship.
That's crazy. That's wild, actually. Talk about spoiler. That came out of nowhere. And BYU was rolling.
Yeah, because Arizona State's 5-2 in the Big 12. So they would be that would knock BYU down to 6-2. I mean, technically, I guess Iowa State's back in that mix. I don't know the tiebreaker. I would assume that Arizona State would have the tiebreaker because they beat BYU.
I don't know if they control their own fate, though. Good point. I'm not sure about that. But Colorado's got to be loving the way it's working out down here. And I'm not sure about Colorado's schedule down the stretch either. I got to look at that. So it to me, the most interesting thing, kind of happening with the college football playoff, definitely, I think their love affair with the Big Ten right now, something going on with that. There's definitely, and like I said, I think ultimately when I saw them with the key win for Texas as Arkansas, I said, okay, all right. They like Texas. They know the strength of schedule is an issue, and if they have to justify it, I think they will find a data point to justify putting a 10-2 Texas in if they can do it. If it obviously if it's something that because of the way things shake out, that's something that they can't actually make happen. But if it is something that they can navigate, I'm telling you, you're going to be okay. We don't even want to have this discussion, hopefully, because Texas ends up, winning the rest of the way and controlling their own fate, making to the SEC title. And then from there, we can talk about Texas trying to make a run in the playoff. Speaking of Texas A&M, Mike Elko spoke with the media yesterday, and he was asked about the Texas A&M game, which, like I said, it may end up being the second biggest game of all time in the Texas A&M rivalry, like in the history of it. SEC title implications on the line, all of that. Well, Mike Elko was asked about it if potentially this team could get distracted this week because they got to play Auburn this week before that Texas A&M game. Here's Mike Elko's Freudian slip that went viral.
There's already so much talk about November 30th. It was announced as a night game today. How do you deal with that with your guys and saying, hey, we still have something ahead of us at Auburn, or is that even a big issue with your team?
I don't think it's an issue. I think when you're in the situation we're in, it's easy to focus on the task at hand. I think, those big games earlier in the year, maybe you look ahead. If we didn't have at stake what's at stake, maybe you would worry about it. I think our focus is single-handedly on on Auburn right now and locked in on what we got to get done.
Ooh, got him.
Oh, the worst slip up. When he walked off, that's the one you beat yourself up for afterwards. Yeah, that should beat yourself up for one.
Yeah, because he really went through the whole he set up the whole thing like, yo, we're focused, we're not gonna get distracted because our single focus is on Texas. I mean Auburn. Damn it.
Yeah, no, it's like calling your wife the wrong name. Not gonna go over well.
Well, because we know, Auburn is a bad football team. But winning at Auburn, I think it's on the road for them. That ain't gonna be easy. But that's not a good football team. So the truth is, I bet that staff, now that they're looking past Auburn, I bet they've put some work in already for the Texas game. Not the actual assistant coaches, but I bet some of the support staff are already working on it, and they probably for the last 3 weeks or so, they've probably been on Texas. And in the offseason, well, Aggies were probably a little busy in the offseason bringing in a new head coach, but they've been putting in some extra work on Texas. Just like Texas have been putting in extra work for A&M. It's that big games, coaches, they do that. They won't admit they do it. Sark actually admitted that they did it for Michigan. So Sark's pretty forthcoming with that kind of stuff. They won't publicly talk about that because it's all about, that week, being in the moment. Sark even said, biggest game of the year. What do you say? What's the biggest game of the year?
This
Kentucky.
Week. Yeah, it's whatever this week's game is. The biggest
whatever
game
this week's game is. Yeah, the biggest game of the year is going to be whatever the next game is. So, yeah, Sark's got to say that. And the team needs to be focused on that week. But oftentimes coaches, they know those are short weeks, man. You got to do some extra prep for big games. And this is setting up to be one of the biggest. If the Aggies don't Aggie it up.
Yeah. And for the record, reminder,
your business.
Auburn's looking ahead too. And even though they're going to lose the game again, they play their rival in the Iron Bowl the next week.
That's true. Good point.
So for the record, Auburn is also looking ahead because they're like, look, we suck. So if we lose to A&M, who cares? But if we can compete with Alabama, we all keep our jobs.
Yeah. No, you're right about that.
So I think
Auburn is one. Yeah, you're right. And Auburn's got talent too. Auburn, I don't know why Auburn's no reason for Auburn to be as bad as they are, though.
So it is worth mentioning that they also have their biggest game of the year the following week.
Fair.
They have the Iron Bowl. So it is something to mention that both teams, but that could lead to even more craziness or who knows what happens in the game.
That's true. But I would say the Iron Bowl, you're right. They're going to look ahead to it. But just the magnitude of the Texas A&M game now, it's bigger. It's as big as as we discussed in the offseason, hypothetically, that it could be. We're like, hey, man, it could be a game that determines who goes to the SEC title.
Oh, no.
It could be a game that determines ultimately whose playoff hopes are dashed. And although Longhorn fans, most of y'all, mocked and ridiculed those segments and takes, like, what are y'all doing? Why y'all on the Aggie hype train? It is coming to fruition. Could the Aggies Aggie it up? Certainly they could.
No, there is.
I don't think they will.
I mean, this is the crazy part is, do you know what the line is for that game?
Oh, let me try to guess real quick because I've not looked at it actually.
All right.
Okay, Texas favorite, of course, but at Aggie Land.
No, I'm saying the line for the Texas A&M Auburn game, the Auburn game.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Texas A&M game. Okay, about the Texas A&M Auburn game. Okay, Texas A&M on the road. Auburn, bad team. Well, let's go Aggies favored by 6.
2.5.
Damn, that's closer than I thought.
That's what I'm saying. Vegas has this game
so
closer.
Vegas thinks it could get interesting. Okay,
So
all right.
that's worth at
They'd
least
have at least by a
noting.
touchdown. Okay, they got less than a field goal. Okay, yeah. I mean, the Aggies play tight games anyway because they're a defensive, minded team. But I did not think the line would be that close. Vegas, hey, that's why they build those damn casinos. They know what they're doing. I honestly, the truth is, I'm not gonna lie. I hope the Aggies don't Aggie it up. I would like because first of all, I think they'll be more dangerous if they lose. I think ultimately the history of the Aggies, I'm not trying to hate on the Aggies, but I don't know how often they've won big games and played in like really big games like that. More in terms of recent history like that. And so I don't know. I think I feel better about Texas right now in that situation just because recently we've seen Texas at least get a chance to play in some of those big games where you're talking about the non-conference games or the college football playoff games a little bit, conference championship games. So I don't know. I feel like the Aggies will be a little bit more dangerous if they lose, like a wounded animal. I feel like they win easier to burst a bubble. I feel like if they win, they'll be riding high. Just like remember early this year when the hype train was full steam ahead, and then what happened? Boom, the disappointing loss
and also,
to South Carolina.
if you've watched A&M this year, you want them to be on the back end of consistency, not on the front end of consistency. So you want them to have the big game because they tend to suck after the big. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like
they
how
tend
they
to
handle
ebb and
success.
flow.
Yes,
You don't want the wave
totally
to go. It's like a tidal wave. You don't want it to go all the way back, or else a big wave's coming at you. But if the big wave just hit, it's going to go back and you'll be fine.
No, I totally agree. No, like I said, I wonder how they handle success more so than how they bounce back after some trials, some tribulations as a program. And so I ultimately think that I'm rooting for the Aggies to win. I want them to go and I want the spectacle.
Yeah,
I mean it'd be great to actually have.
Plus, for the record,
first game back
Texas could use
really
a win against a ranked team.
Also true. They could use a quality win. That would help out Texas. Yeah, because I don't know what happens to the Aggies if they lose to the Auburn. Where they rank right now? 15th?
Yeah, they dropped back down.
They dropped down to like 20. They 20 something. Easily they'd be in the 20 something if they lost to Auburn because Auburn's a bad team. That'd be a really bad loss.
Yeah.
At least South Carolina, that loss don't look so bad. South Carolina's trending right now. Right, South Carolina and Notre Dame. That's I guess it's a quality loss. That's a quality loss. That's a top 10 team.
Yeah, they're number 6 right now.
You lose to Auburn. Yeah, you're gonna drop down.
Yeah.
And then,
so in all
Texas.
reality, for Texas, it's probably better if they win that game.
I'm rooting for them to win because I want them to go into that game with if the Aggies are going in trying to get their 10th win, Longhorns already with their 10th win. I said 1975 is the only year where Texas and Texas A&M, both programs ended the season with double-digit wins. And I believe the Aggies won that year. The Aggies were number 2. Texas was number 5 that season. And the Aggies won 20-10. And it was at Aggie Land. It was in Aggie Land. That's the only time. In the 118 year, whatever the year how many years they've been playing, that's the only time where both teams have ended the season with double-digit wins. It could happen this year. I mean, it's a really good chance, even if the Longhorns beat them, that they'll get it in a bowl game or something like that somehow.
Yeah.
All right, which is like I said, guys. Think about how rare that is, and to happen in the same conference too. Did not expect it. And in Mike Elko's first year, that'd be quite an accomplishment. All right, we come back. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain, talk some Texas football on the other side. We'll hear from Gunnar Helm talking about that senior class, that very special group, senior class. Also, we'll talk a little bit about their upcoming opponent, the Kentucky Wildcats. We'll dive into a lot of those topics and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some Texas football conversation. It'll be farewell night, farewell day, senior night, whatever you want to call it, coming up this weekend for the Longhorns. A lot of their expected to be the last scheduled home game for a lot of those guys who will be moving on. And one of them is Gunnar Helm, who's had a hell of a season. I mean, he really has had an unbelievable year. And he he was asked about the biggest impact that this group, this class has had on the program, and if he could describe it, how would he describe it? What did they this class? What's their legacy? I guess you could ask. This is what Gunnar Helm had to say.
I mean, like I said before, just kind of going back to culture, I think we kind of laid the foundation. We've been around, the culture that we have now and the culture that we had last year with guys like Jay Witt and Murph and X and all those guys, all those great players that are playing on Sundays now. I would just say with all those guys being in our class, this was the class that had to lay the foundation, that had to get the culture turned around. And, I think that we've done a great job, but everyone's bought in. So makes our jobs a whole lot easier.
Yeah, he says everybody is bought in, and the culture, we've talked about it. It is a culture that's been winning them games, and the crazy thing about it is, I was just reading the story about Tom Herman, who was fired.
Yes,
and the drama just in 2 years, there at FAU, in a small program where there probably shouldn't be a lot of drama at FAU, just shouldn't, because it's small time football program. There's not a lot on the line. But he didn't win there. He was 6-16. His 2-year record at FAU was 6-16, 2-8 this season. Had the fiasco. He's chasing down the opposing coach and trying to get an explanation why the coach big timed him during the handshake. We all know very immature behavior, unbecoming of a head coach with Tom Herman. And the crazy thing about it, like he didn't really have a like at Texas, like at one point, I think the culture was good. But he himself as a coach, because he had kind of an immature approach and mentality as a coach, his culture at Texas really got toxic really fast there toward the end. And it just shows you here is a kind of another example of it, just really quickly, how things kind of spiraled on him. It got so bad. He fired his DC right before he was fired. He fired his defensive coordinator right before he was fired. And after he was fired, and the DC's name is Rock Bellantoni. So he fired Rock Bellantoni a couple of weeks before he himself was fired. The administration fired him. They hired Rock Bellantoni back. They hired him back. No, they did. They hired him back. They said, and he went on social media and posted on X, I'm back, accompanied by a 50 Cent song, Many Men, which a lot of people took as a shot at Tom Herman. Apparently Tom Herman wanted him out because a lot of people thought he would be the one that would have gotten the interim job when they fired Tom Herman, and apparently was a locker room favorite, and the coaches liked him. Talking about some real toxic stuff. And so the interim coach who got the gig right after Tom Herman was fired, Chad Lunsford, first thing he did was hire back Rock Bellantoni. So this shows you his old staff was against him. Like, his old staff was like, nah, man, we don't like that move. So they brought back the other dude, and actually they're going to face Charlotte, I think, in their last game. Also a Texas connection, because Charlotte's head coach is Tim Brewster now, if I believe. He got the interim job, who recruited me at Texas. Coach Tim Brewster, who recruited me at Texas. I meant to reach out to him to congratulate him on that, but if I'm not mistaken, they play Charlotte on Saturday at 3. And Charlotte's bad because they just fired their coach to give Tim Brewster the interim job. They lost 4 straight. And then you'll have FAU, also a bad football team, after firing Tom Herman. My point is, Tom Herman wasn't good for the culture at Texas. And in terms of whatever you want to go back to how he handled the House of Texas, all of that, that's a different debate for a different discussion for a different day. But I mean, we all remember the conduct of Tom Herman, right? Whether it be the double birds or whether it be him mocking players on the sideline, that kind of stuff, him getting into it with Mike Gundy at at midfield. So the culture at Texas, we know that it was problematic. Like it was an issue. There was no doubt. And this is my point. Bringing up that story was not to further shame Tom Herman. It is a funny story, but to also show you that he's leaving places as the head coach with very toxic cultures. And he's not good for those cultures, and the decisions he makes and his immature, actions as a head coach oftentimes set a bad example for the locker room, for the coaching staff there, and leads to, like I said, this toxicity at the programs that he left. And I think for Sark, that was a big issue. I think Tom Herman was here longer, so he had time to do a little bit more damage. And I always say that was a good coach in Tom Herman somewhere. I don't know if he'll ever get back to it. I think he'll probably be hired as an OC by maybe a power program. I don't think he'll get another head coaching job unless he wants to go to a lower level. But Sark had a lot to clean up culture wise. I'll give him a ton of credit because he did it rather quickly. It took him basically a season to flip it and turn around. But if you ask Sark about it, he won't take the credit for it. He'll give the credit to this class and like the class before it, and the guys he inherited. He gives them a ton of credit. And a lot of, those guys were Tom Herman guys. So Tom Herman he acquired the right talent and the right players, but he himself would set a bad example for the culture for those guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was around the program a lot when Tom Herman was there doing a lot of stuff, being with Tom. I see Tom Herman twice a week between events that I was working and being part of it. So, and there was very much of basically the thought was culture doesn't matter. Culture's overrated. It's not a real thing. Just go out there and play football. We're gonna out scheme them. We're gonna out talent them. We're gonna do that, but culture doesn't matter. That was basically the feeling under Tom Herman. Was that is an overrated thing in college football. That's not really what you need. You need to listen to what the coach says. You need to follow him, but it's not culture. It's what the coach says. You listen to what your coaches say. You do what they say. Which I feel is more an Urban Meyer thing. The culture is not a team culture. It's not a player-led team. It is a coach-led team. You listen to what your coach says and you do what he says. And that was much more of what Tom wanted. And so that was what the feeling was. And when you saw Sark come in, he very much switched that narrative completely early, but you could tell the players bought in. And that's why he gives them so much credit, is because they could have all said, man, you don't pick the music. You don't we don't care. We don't want to buy in. But he gave them the power. He said, I want this to be your team, but you have to trust me to get you there. And everybody took into it because they wanted to have more ownership in their team. I don't know if they did under the Tom Herman. I don't know if they had their own ownership of the team. It was Tom's team. And it was Bijan's team, or it was whoever's team, or Sam's team. Yeah. But it wasn't the team's team. Like, this doesn't feel like Quinn's team. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that as a shot to Quinn. I mean, he's a leader, but it's Jade Barron's team. It's Gunnar Helm's team. It's, what I mean? I think there's so many more players as a part of it now that it isn't one guy that you look at and go, that is your culture bearer and the guy. And if that guy's on the sideline, it's a problem, because he's, that's everything to your team. Yeah. I think there's now so many pieces into it that Quinn's a big part of it, but it's not just one guy running it. And that's kind of been what Sark has brought in, that everyone has ownership of this team and everyone's bought in. And that's how you get a guy like Gunnar Helm, who maybe, years past was trying to get up, but guys were getting ahead of him. And by the time he buys in fully and is working hard every day, he works on himself enough that now he's a reason why that Sark came out the other day and said, oh, we don't have to run the big old line package because Gunnar Helm's good enough, good enough everything. So I don't need to over scheme because I have this guy that I got to keep on the field.
That's exactly what he said. No, you're right about that, man. It is. I agree with you. And that's a great point about, Tom Herman, and how just he wanted to run his team basically. But and I know not all these guys. I mean, I know Jade Barron is, but not all these guys obviously were Tom Herman guys. Some of them were David Benda, guys like that. But just going back to, they were recruited by Tom Herman. I think this is like the first Gunnar Helm was like in that first class. So they were basically recruited by Tom Herman. I think some of them committed to Tom
Yeah,
Herman.
I believe
Bill Quinn initially committed to Tom Herman, remember?
Yes.
and then decommitted. And then, so my point is, like, this was kind of the last class that Tom Herman influenced or that committed to him.
Yeah.
Basically,
So
last group of guys.
Yeah, I believe like Gunnar Helm came on early.
Like,
so he came in like December and Sark was hired in January.
Yeah. So like at least Tom was recruiting them.
Yeah,
like
they recruited them. They were on campus when Sark got hired.
Yeah. This is the last group of those guys. And they've honestly, he's right, man. They flipped the culture and built the foundation. And now from this point on, basically, these are not guys that Sark kind of inherited. These are go after this group. I believe they may have one or two, but after this group, largely the rest of the group is just everybody that he himself and his coaches have recruited and that they've acquired, that they've brought in. But they've done an amazing job with the group they inherited. They showed us they can develop talent with this group.
Yes.
Because we did not see these players, a lot of these players having these types of ceilings. Right. We did not see this for Gunnar Helm being a mid-round pick. Alfred Collins, I think a lot of people had given up on the development of Alfred Collins and thought, I just think he's going to be, he is what he is. He's got the frame and the measurables, but I don't know if the light will ever come on. I don't know if it'll all come together for him ever. And I think it's starting to come together. Jahdae Barron, another guy. Right? Did we all see Jahdae Barron as a Thorpe Award finalist, a Thorpe Award winner? I think we saw him as a guy that can be all conference, one of the best players in the country. Now you're talking about the best player at this position in the country. I think that's what we learned from this group, and they prove it, and they can go recruit on that. Like, look what we developed with all these guys, and look at how they all get to achieve their dreams, which is what every player wants, which is to have a chance to play in the league. All right, we come back. We'll get into the topic for the Big Fat Poll today, and we got your musically themed day of the week. All that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis, some Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, coming back on the horn.
Back in the Rodcast here on a Wednesday morning, and that means it's a one artist Wednesday. Playing music all from one artist, celebrating one artist's career. And today we're going to play some Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh, starting off with some James Gang, then some Joe Walsh, and maybe we'll throw some Eagles there at the end. But nice. Joe Walsh, 77 years old today. Joe Walsh.
Ooh, I like that.
He is, I'll tell you, there's some good stories about Joe Walsh, and he is just a crazy, crazy guy that has been through a lot, but also one of those guys that everyone seems to pretty much like across music, which not true for all of the Eagles, not true for all of them, but a lot of people like really? Joe Walsh.
Got a reputation. Some of the Eagles,
some of them. That's why their tour, when they broke up, their first tour back was called the Hell Freezes Over tour, because they were like, none of us are working together unless hell freezes over. But
that's pretty good.
But let's get to the big fat poll today. Text line's open 512-447-3776. We'll get this posted up on X at the Horn ATX.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Big Fat Poll of the Day today. This is something I was kind of looking at Kentucky stuff, starting to get into that, about a trend in Kentucky that has changed a little bit as the SEC season has gone on. So we'll ask the question. It's been a problem for Texas too. How many rushing yards will Texas have against Kentucky? How many rushing yards will Texas have against Kentucky? Early in the season, early in SEC play, Kentucky allowed 79 rushing yards to South Carolina, 102 to Georgia, 92 to Ole Miss. So pretty good early in that SEC play. As it went on, Vandy got 145 on him. Florida got 197 on him. Auburn, 326. Just ran and ran and ran and ran.
Oh, say those teams again that got the high rushing totals.
So we go, once we get past Ole Miss, we go Vandy at 145, okay. Florida at 197, Auburn at 326, and then Tennessee at 185.
I believe most of those have quarterbacks that can run a little bit.
They do have a little bit of quarterback run, and but they all were able to get.
Lagway play versus them.
I have to go back and look.
I got to go back and look at it too. I'll look at it, but that's a good point. Yeah,
but yes, but their numbers went down as the season went on. Their numbers started to go down a little bit. If you look at Texas, of course, we go through theirs. They had 198 versus Mississippi State, 177 versus Oklahoma, 29 against Georgia. That's the bad one. Vandy 104, Florida 210, and Arkansas 139. So we've been pretty consistently over 100 yards for Texas in the run game as well. Usually that's you get a lead and you kind of run the ball out at the end of the game and lean on your run game to get you through the end. They break one big one or something throughout the game as well to get them up that total. So when we ask you how many rushing yards will Texas have against Kentucky, we'll ask you 0 to 100, 100 to 130, 130 to 160, or 160 plus.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because I know, Lagway did play.
Okay.
He didn't have a ton of rushing yards, so it's not necessarily the QB run game. Some of those teams have quarterbacks that can move and run, but in those matchups, they weren't necessarily the great equalizer, right? I didn't think they gave him that much of an advantage. At running quarterback, you do have to account for it, so yes. It does affect the defense as a +1. The problem with Texas is, I've said it before, they have an average to above or slightly below average running game. And they don't have a bread and butter run concept this year that they can rely on.
Yep.
It has been the outside zone for Texas, but this season, and we can get into this actually a little bit next hour in Rod's Rant, Sark's done a great job of troubleshooting game to game to figure out exactly what run concept is going to work best.
Mm-hmm.
In the game versus Arkansas, it ended up being that buck sweep that worked really well. That was the one that Jaden Blue broke on the 28-yard run that he had. He broke that on that buck sweep play where they pull the backside and the front side guard. And so I think for Sark, it's actually a compliment that game to game, I don't think he knows what run concept is going to work because they can't really lean on one. Remember in the Oklahoma game, it was a split wide zone.
Yeah.
They kept hitting. It hit, boom, split wide zone worked because they aren't that dominant in one specific concept. So it's more about the defense, what the weaknesses are on defense and what they can exploit defensively and what kind of front the defense is presenting, rather than Texas being able to impose their will in the run game because they don't have an identity in the run game.
And that's
but they can be effective though.
It can be, and that's where looking at this game, seeing that you now have a bigger scale to look at of Kentucky games of what has worked against them to be a little bit more prepared against. Okay, this is a Kentucky team that early on, when they were playing Georgia, when they were playing Ole Miss, and they were playing these teams a little bit closer and really holding down and going, this team is defensively killing these guys. They were holding the rush games down. And as the season progressed, people started to find a little bit more, and that's what you find on any team throughout the season. Okay, they just don't defend this well. And you have to figure that out for the rest of the season. We just talked about it all day yesterday with the 3 high, that it took teams, I don't know why it took them this long to realize that Quinn struggles and Sark struggles with 3 high. So let's just run that. And we know now Kentucky and A&M will most likely both play it because you figured out something to slow them down. Let's do it. So with this, you figured out Kentucky probably has a few more things now you can look at and go, okay, maybe we can try this one against them. These plays will probably work better against what they defend, and we can get in and maybe get some explosive plays out of that run game. That's where I'm a little bit curious if Texas is going to be able to get there, and it maybe earlier than later bring in that complementary game that for Texas a lot of time that complementary run game isn't really till the second half. In the first half, it's not necessarily there.
I agree, and I think there are two factors there, right? I think Texas wears out opponents because they do have a huge, just massive offensive line. So I think they wear them out a little bit. That's what the running game is, some body blows that you'll start to see more return on that investment in the second half. But also I think it goes back to what I said about Sark. I think Sark's troubleshooting. I think he's trying. It takes him a quarter, sometimes it takes him a half to figure it out. Like, okay, these are the 3 concepts that we need to hammer in the second half because they're going to work for us. I know the formation to use now. I know how to set them up for these run concepts.
Yes.
And that's why he says sometimes it takes him a quarter, sometimes it takes him a half. I think in this game it took him like a half to figure it out, and then he figured out that buck sweep that's going to work. They were averaging like 8 yards. Now they did have a 28 yarder on that buck sweep, but they were still averaging like 5 yards per rush on it.
Yeah,
versus Arkansas. On that buck sweep, and then when they hit the big one, then you're talking about them averaging like 8 yards per rush on it. But it was the same thing for an Oklahoma game. They figured out it's a split wide zone, and it doesn't work the entire game, especially when a defensive coordinator makes an adjustment, and then you got to find something else. But if Sark hammers it when he finds the vulnerability, if he just goes at it and is extreme and gratuitous in his attack, then he'll hit on it. Like he'll break one and it'll be just enough to get the run game going or to put you in good field position so that you can score some points, obviously then get the passing game going or the RPO game going. You're not going to be, like I said, to impose your will in the run game. You're not that kind of team. No, but can you strategically be able to run when you need to? That's what you did versus Arkansas. When you needed to have the run game going, you got the run game going. That's what you couldn't do versus Georgia. And that's the concern. Can they get it going when they need to? Because I don't know if you're ever going to be setting the tone and going to be, in my opinion, leading with the run game.
Yeah.
As a run, you're not that kind of
team. No, I don't think they will either. But yeah, especially if you can, if they do run that 3 high, you're going to run the ball and try and get it going.
Well, you got to try it.
And so that's where looking at it, it became interesting seeing that basically past Ole Miss, everyone had success running the ball against Kentucky, at least some, and some teams did really well at it. So if you're able to say, hey, maybe we can push away a little bit and maybe get that going in the second quarter, then this game becomes further out of hand a little bit quicker.
Yeah. No, I'm going to go back and look at some of those Kentucky games and try to figure out, like you said, what concepts are there concepts that are right now they're trending for them that are really successful, that are common among all those opponents. Because like you said, those are some pretty impressive numbers rushing against Kentucky. So we'll get to that. All right. Thanks for the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. We come back. We'll get into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. Apparently, Michael Irvin, the playmaker, who is dialed in. I'm sure he's got Jerry on, on his phone, so he can text Jerry, call Jerry, probably talk to Jerry a couple of times a week. And that guy who probably talks to Jerry a couple of times a week is claiming that if Deion Sanders, that Deion Sanders may be interested in taking the Cowboys job if this happens. That if the Cowboys do this, that Deion will most assuredly take the head coaching job for the Cowboys. I brought this up yesterday. I did not know the playmaker was going to go on the airwaves and say this, but I brought it up yesterday. It's gaining some momentum. This theory that Deion could be the next head coach of the Cowboys. I thought it was all kind of just scuttlebutt. Turns out, oh no, the media's working. It seems like maybe the media wants it to happen, or maybe Deion wants it to happen. We'll come back and discuss that. We'll also talk a little bit Cowboys. We'll get into the latest firing in the NFL. A GM, the first GM that's been fired this season. We'll get to that too. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a One Artist Wednesday edition of the Rodcast, and that's when my man Patrick, our co-host and the Idealionaire on the show, goes deep down the rabbit hole into the catalog of one specific artist, group, or band. And today it is Joe Walsh who we are featuring for One Artist Wednesday. And so we appreciate Patrick hooking us up there for One Artist Wednesday. This is his 77th birthday, you said?
77th birthday today, yes.
For Joe Walsh. There you go. So we appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. He also hooks us up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, which is already posted at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll of the day today. How many rushing yards will Texas have against Kentucky? We gave you a few options: 0 to 100, 100 to 130, 130 to 160, and 160 plus.
Oh, man, it'd be great to get that running game going. But they got, Deion Walker's projected first-round pick, or at least first or second round pick as the defensive tackle for them. They got NFL players on that defense. And Mark Stoops does a really good job with that defense. So it will be a test for that Texas run game. I'm not sure. I think it'll get going late. I think that's kind of the story of the Texas run game for multiple reasons, as we just brought up last hour. So I think when you're looking at it to get going, I think it'll get going in the second or the third quarters when you'll start getting it going. And that's what happened in the game versus Arkansas. Got going in the second half, and that's really, and then you were able to close out that game with a 7-minute drive. But even on that drive, you need the screen game. 13, need the screen game. So I mean, I consider those almost, to me, in my mind, those are rushing yards anyway. Those quick.
Yeah.
Your longest pass play was Trey Wisner and that mesh rail concept where he catches it and gets 30-yard scamper. How long was that pass in the air? Was 5 yards within the line of scrimmage? To me, that almost feels like a run play. It's an extension of the running game.
No, it is. And I mean, because these stats are also always somewhat misleading too. In like the Georgia game, Trey Wisner had over 50 yards rushing. So they didn't have 29 yards rushing, but because college football counts sack yardage into it, and Quinn kept going backwards, it said, you say you have 29 yards rushing, you technically had more. Yeah. You did move the ball forward more than that, but because of the lost yardage, you lose some of that. And then, as you're saying as well, there's plays where they get screens and that are kind of extensions of the run game. So you can put into it that there's other ways to get the ball moving downfield that are still kind of extensions of the run game. But when we're saying just rushing yards, the last 3 SEC games Kentucky played, they gave up over 160 rushing yards.
Yeah.
And those teams have, some of those teams have better running backs in Texas.
I was going to say they've probably got a better running game than Texas does.
And they focus on it more. But that being said, Kentucky has allowed it. So this is not the stingiest of rush defenses like they look like early in the year.
Very true. I agree with that. Yeah. I just don't have a lot of confidence in Texas run game to improve drastically and dramatically down the stretch here. But yes, they do need to get better in the run game. Like there needs to be more success overall in the run game. So maybe when Sark's troubleshooting what concept is going to work, maybe he's got to figure it out a little bit quicker. I think like I said, ultimately they don't have a bread and butter run concept like they have in recent years.
Yes.
They can hang their hat on and they can run against any front, and they can almost run against almost any front or run against any defense because they know, no, we do this better than damn near any team in the country. And forever it was the outside zone for Texas. With Bijan and Rojo and even with Jay Brooks, it was the outside zone. And since I think now this season, you've seen them, kind of go between and be malleable between concepts that work from game to game. And nothing wrong with that, by the way. It shows you that diversity of the run game, how much variety they have. They don't get stumped. Sometimes it's the counter that's working. Sometimes it's the split wide zone that's working. Sometimes it's the inside zone. Sometimes it's going to end up being, that buck sweep, like I said, against Arkansas. That was the one that popped it a few times. I just don't think they know from game to game. And ultimately that means you got about, a half or a quarter of football where Sark's just throwing different concepts out there for different formations and kind of tinkering to see, they're going to play it like this every time. You know what might work really well? And I just think that process is going to take a little while. I think he's growing more comfortable with it, though. I do. But every game, it feels like, not every game, but most games is something different that works in the run game. And I don't think we know what it's going to be. I'm going to go back and try to watch some Kentucky film and see what has worked really well versus them since you got these numbers up. And I bet we'll find 2 or 3 concepts that everybody is using.
I think that is somewhat a plus, though, for Texas as well, is there isn't a game plan. Now, you can go 3 high to stop the pass, but there is no, here's how you stop Texas run game. There is not a necessary, scheme that stops what they do best, because they don't do any one thing best. They find what you do, and they're just more versatility. What we say, is that the word of the year? Versatility.
Yep, versatility. That's the buzzword. That is. And no, you're right. And you know what? I would say the passing game, since that is the kind of the identity of the offense, maybe teams are just fine with you giving you the run and giving you the lighter boxes and saying, hey, man, you can run it. Go ahead. Because I'd much rather deal with your run game than have to cover Gunnar Helm, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond. I don't know when DeAndre Moore's coming back. Actually, we haven't gotten an update on that.
He said he was today. Yeah, he said he was practicing. Everybody basically was practicing. Mo Blackwell was practicing. Jarek, was it Jaden Blue who left with the sling?
Jaden Blue, he had a little sling on.
But he said everybody, but he kind of always does that. So,
and listen, you got to worry about Jaden Blue in the passing game. I just think teams at this point are like, I'd rather you run it, and I'll give you the run
I
rather
agree.
than having to cover all of your receivers or defend them all.
But that also plays well into Texas' hand, that if you keep them moving and it's a 3rd and short and 2nd and shorts, then Texas can do whatever they want to do. So there is a point where you have to slow this Texas team down in the run game to put them into long situations, because if you just let them pick up 4 yards of carry and say you don't worry about it, it puts Texas in winnable positions, and they're really good once you get them in there.
No, I agree. If I'm going to be in Texas, though, I throw out that 3 high and I give them a light box in the run game.
Yeah.
Because at one point I'm gonna get a negative play. Yeah. Doesn't that seem to happen for Texas? That at one point there's a negative play,
especially early.
Yeah, exactly. There's at one point in that drive, if I'm going to make you, we talk about it all the time, right? It's Bill Walsh's ode mantra: human error. I'm trying to eliminate it, and if I'm on defense, I'm trying to facilitate it. Human error.
Yeah.
I just need you, because you're going to screw. If you got to go on a 12-play drive, one of them dudes is going to screw it up.
You're going to get a penalty. You get
a penalty. You miss a block.
Trey Wisner did the bounce back, and multiple guys on Texas have done it, where you bounce back, you catch the ball, you run 7 yards back, and now there's 12 guys somehow defending you. Like, how did you got going got the bench on me?
North and south. No, I'm saying, like, something's gonna happen there. So that's why if I'm going against Texas, like, I give them that run game.
Yeah.
I throw that 3 high back, and I say, now we're gonna give them the run game. We get in the red zone, and then maybe we'll have to worry about a little bit as the field shrinks. But their run game is not formidable. It's an average run game. Chances are at one point you're gonna stop them for a short gain. At one point there, and that's all you really need against Texas. Then you put them kind of behind the chains, and then win that 50-50 down, and then you get 3rd and long. And Texas had been great this year in 3rd and long. That's why Sark wants to stay away from 3rd and long.
Exactly.
So I was trying to stay away from
that's
because they hadn't been good at it.
Yeah, because and that's also the deal, is how well can you tackle? Because if you're having problems tackling, this is an explosive run game at times. They have 2 running backs that can go. They don't have the running backs going to Jarrett Gibson's probably your closest thing to a running back that is just going to
downhill
baby rhino it, but downhill run. But other than that, those 2 guys, if you get there, they'll sit behind blocking and they can pick up 25 yards like it's nothing.
Yeah, they got to make you miss guys. Jarrett Gibson's a run you over guy.
Baby rhino.
He ain't trying to make you miss. You ain't got to worry about getting your feet set and all that. You better worry about bringing your arse when Jarrett Gibson's coming down. He's looking. Yeah,
he's
I
coming
remember
at
them
you.
dudes.
Jarrett Gibson
he's coming at you. Yeah, the other guys, you're like, okay, where's the sideline? Where's my help coming from? Because this dude's gonna try to put me in a blender. Jarrett Gibson ain't putting you in a blender.
He's coming at you like Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, which I like the call because it was a way to break Tennessee. I guess you figured, hey, I got Arch anyway. Everybody wants to see Arch. You know what, Quinn? Go out there, run him over. You get hurt, hey, you know what's all good.
Even Sark said it. He was like, I would have preferred him not to do that, but
I agree. I'm like, what are you doing, Quinn?
I like what Quinn did, and the fact that he said, I watch my players all the time when I need 3 yards, dance around at 2 and don't get the 3rd. I'm going to get that last yard.
Good for you, Quinn.
But But yeah, not how I would usually use my quarterback.
Yeah. Not the quarterback like Quinn, as frail
No.
as he is. No, I would not do it. But no, it took some moxie. No, it got the sideline hype too. And we keep talking about the efficiency of Quinn, the inconsistency of Quinn, and the team is hyping behind him and supporting him because of that play. Like that was a winning play.
No, I remember in the post game, you heard Alfred Collins, and he was like, "That's my quarterback." Watching that, and you heard Jahdae Barron go, "That's my quarterback." You watched it. So the defense, when you saw the defense get so pumped up that their quarterback, like they fought hard enough to get you back in the game and put you in the point to win, and go, man, just give me the 2 yards, and the quarterback does it. They love it because those guys have to hit every play.
Yeah, no, it's great. That was a culture play for Quinn.
Yeah,
it really was. I mean, we all agree. I mean, that you didn't have to put yourself in harm's way. Even the coach recognizes like that's not what we want from Quinn. But in that moment, all that mattered to Quinn was the win.
Yep.
Not his body, not his draft status and stock, not the fact that he is injury prone to a certain extent and probably shouldn't be trying to take on DBs or whatever it is, line scrimmage like that. None of that mattered. Only thing that mattered, only thing he was thinking about was the win. And his mind, he's like, if I get these yards, we win. Yeah. That's it. That's all I care about.
Love it.
I may end up breaking my neck. Who cares? I get the win. He should care, by the way.
We all care about that, Quinn. But
we all care about that, Quinn. You get my point. I'm not trying to be extreme here, but yes, that's why the team appreciated it so much, and nobody's talking about, at least on the team, how inconsistent Quinn has been. They're like, no, that's my quarterback. My quarterback. You got to get the dub. Right, that's what it's all about. All right, let's get to the Horn headlines here, then we'll come back and talk some NFL. Apparently, there is some growing, at least, support, or maybe there's a swell, if you will, about the report that Deion Sanders could be in the running to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Don't know how much substance there is to it, but apparently now the playmaker himself, who is as close as you can get to the Cowboys organization, even he is throwing it out there now. So we'll get to that. But before we do, let's get the Horn headlines. Let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Mavericks blew out the Pelicans 132-91 last night. 8 Mavericks finished with double-digit points as Dallas shot over 50% from the field for the game. The Spurs picked up a 110-104 win over the Thunder with the Spurs' top 3 scorers out for the game. Keldon Johnson went off in the second quarter and ended up with 22 points to lead the way for the Spurs. Both teams are now 1-1 in NBA Cup play. Tonight, the Rockets take on the Pacers in Houston. Texas women's basketball will host their annual 40 Acres Field Trip Day today with upwards of 5,000 kids in attendance from local schools as the Longhorns take on Tarleton State. Game takes place at 11 a.m. at the Moody Center. In college football, the latest college football playoff rankings were released with no change to the top 5, leaving Texas at number 3. After BYU's loss to Boise State has now claimed the last bye as the highest-ranked conference champion, Tennessee, SMU, Colorado, and Clemson are your first 4 out of the playoffs as it stands today. And in the NFL, the Jets have fired general manager Joe Douglas after 5+ seasons. The move comes 6 weeks after the Jets fired coach Robert Saleh and have gone 1-5 in that span. Bill Savage is now the interim GM, and that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. I appreciate those. Let's hear from the playmaker first here. I threw this out there yesterday that it's been a lot of scuttlebutt. All right, a lot of whispers, rumor on the street, through the grapevine, whatever you want to say, that the Cowboys might consider when they fire Mike McCarthy, which is something else we'll talk about too. I was reading an article recently about whether the Cowboys or when the Cowboys would fire Mike McCarthy, but that if they fire and when they fire Mike McCarthy, that Deion Sanders will be one of the top candidates. Didn't really think much of it. This is just people talking, a lot of gossip, a lot of conjecture. But then the playmaker, Michael Irvin, went on the herd, and this is what the playmaker said.
News today, you do believe, and I do too, that if Shador went to the Cowboys, Deion would accept the job.
I believe 100%. And I can tell you, Good sources have told me that. Great sources have told me that. That's all I just say like that without violating anything else.
The playmate. You know I love having.
We assume the great sources are somebody with the last name Jones of some kind, Steven or Jerry or someone like that.
I mean, he should know Dion too.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Maybe it's Dion. Like I said, it could be great point. He could be either one of them because he's close to the Cowboys and close to Jerry Jones, close to Dion. Could be either one of those. First of all, obviously, the huge if buts, candies, and nuts, the elephant in the room is if they get Shadur Sanders. Well, they just signed Dak to a deal.
This is the thing. I don't know if it has to be Shadur now. I think it has to be Travis Hunter now. I would say you have to get one of the two, and Shadur doesn't make sense right now because you have Dak Prescott. You just got the big contract. But if you go, Shadur is going to go wherever he's going to go. I get Travis Hunter here. And then in 3-4 years, when we're winning everything, and then Dak's gone, we get rid of him when his contract's up, and Shadur we bring in
on the second end of the deal. That's interesting. You could. That's a good route. I like that. And Dion has stated that he considers Travis Hunter to be a son.
Yes,
to be basically a son to him, and that he is just like for Shadur, that he is going to work behind the scenes. And he said this literally. We played the audio that he's going to work behind the scenes to try to influence where these guys are drafted.
Yeah.
And there are certain teams, basically, if you're an organizational fustercluck of a franchise, that he is almost going to disallow them to be drafted by you. And he's going to use his power and influence to do so. So to your point, if you're drafted in the top 10, you got a chance because Travis Hunter's going to go top 10. And we know Shadur's going to be the first quarterback draft, so he's top 10. So you may not have a chance at Shadur because the top quarterback usually means number 1 overall or close to it somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Maybe top 3 picks overall. The first quarterback will be somewhere in there. Travis Hunter will be top 10. He might be top 5. I haven't looked.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say top 5 right now because I just don't know who else.
Yeah, so you'd have to still kind of move up, or you got to tank.
Yeah,
precipitously at this point to get it. But you're number 9 right now in the draft order.
And if you're going to go after Dion, you can make the trades. You can try and make it happen. It's
it's
probably not the
some assets.
strongest draft in the world, so teams may be willing to sit back a year.
And like I said, you can make some trades and move up there if you want to. You got some players, you got some assets. I mean, you talk about Deron Bland all the time as a trade piece. You can trade him. I know you may not want to, but there's some other pieces. You have some young pieces. If you really want to make this happen, from a organizational perspective, you can. But Dion, let's look at Dion's side. So Dion, of course, is being asked about this. A lot of people don't believe Dion's going to stay at Colorado, period. Whether maybe if it's the NFL that comes calling, and the situation is perfect, then maybe he'll go to the league. But either way, a lot of people believe that he's not long for Colorado once Shadur and once Travis Hunter go to the NFL, that Deion Sanders is likely to leave Colorado. Dion is, I don't know, he's not so sure. Or at least I would say that his recent comments, they lead me to believe that he likes Colorado and what he's built there. So it's going to be tougher to lure him away than people think. People think it's like people think he's looking for the next gig. That's basically the belief is that, oh man, he's looking for the next big job. And that I'm not saying he's not going to be open to it. Dion is a smart businessman, and he knows how to take advantage of opportunities and when he's trending the right way in which he is right now. But here's the comments from Dion, because he's been asked about if he's going to leave Colorado and what his ultimate goals as a coach. But listen to Dion and listen to his words here. It seems to me, like I say, it's going to be tougher to lure him away, or maybe this is his business, so you can have more leverage and you got to pay him more money to lure him away. But this is Dion talking about how attached he is to Colorado.
You're mentioned for everything that comes up these days, college, pro, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that just the price of
talk
winning?
like that with my AD in here? That's so disrespectful. You gonna talk about me going somewhere with my AD in here? Yeah, they mentioned us with a lot of other stuff before we start winning too, didn't they? Did that? That wasn't fair, was it? Price. That's the price of everything. Hold on one second. I'm happy where I am, man. I'm good. I got a kickstand down. You know what a kickstand is? A lot of people don't in there not of age don't know what a kickstand is. I mean, I'm resting. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic about where I am. I love it here. I truly do. Next question.
All right, there you go. I will say it's AD was there in the room though.
Yeah, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna say when he could be in the college football playoff? Hey, team, by the way, see ya.
No. Of course, I don't expect him to admit anything, but I don't know. I feel like Deion likes what he's built there in Colorado a little more than people are giving credit for. I will admit that it's probably wise to cash the lottery ticket when Shedeur and Travis Hunter leave.
Yeah.
Just in case. I would give that advice to anyone. I was like, no. When you have that type of exodus of talent, of special talent leave, cash the lottery ticket then. If you're a good coach, like I think Deion is a good coach, I think he's proven that at every level, then you'll adapt to the situation you go to and you'll have success there. You'll figure out a game plan, you'll problem solve, you'll get it done, you'll hire the right people. But if you're, let's just say a lot of it is the product of you having the chemistry with a quarterback, unlike anybody else, because that's your son. And him being also a great salesman for you in the locker room and how devoted he is to you because you're his dad. And Travis Hunter being the most unique talent in college football in the last, 100 years potentially. Just in case a lot of the success is connected to that, cash the lottery ticket. I tell any coach the same thing. Cash it.
No, I mean, because I don't think he's going to Florida State to try and resurrect that program after a terrible year and all the problems they've had and the fact they didn't want to talk to him before. And so I think that's one that you would have a couple years ago said.
And in Florida says they're keeping Billy Napier.
Yeah. But you would have thought Florida State, that's, it's where you go. He'd be over there and want to go back. But those are the schools you don't necessarily think that's where he will go. In college, if you were to go somewhere, if the rumors were true that Dan Lanning got NFL interest and he went away.
Oh, oh my God. Dan at Oregon? That's scary.
The thing about this, he gets a Nike deal. So they give him his own signature shoe. They put all this money into him with Nike and Phil Knight, and he's got unlimited money to spend at Oregon. He's got all those things. That, I think, is an attractive offer.
That's scary, man.
Just saying. I think that one makes sense because it makes sense for Phil Knight, too.
Texas fans should root against that.
I'm just saying. It's an attractive offer if Phil Knight can throw Nike money at him outside of the coaching, too. Signature shoe, big ad campaign for him and all that.
Well, cool is currency, and he has tons of cool. The cool factor with Deion is through the roof. And then you'd add that cool factor with the Oregon cool factor because of the uniforms and the Nike connection. And then you give him a sugar daddy.
Yeah.
You give him a sugar daddy that wants to spend money. Oh, man. That is, like I said, that's scary.
I'm just saying. So that's one that I've looked at. Yeah. And then if you go NFL level, the two teams that I would look at, too, is New York. Both New York teams. We saw Joe Douglas just got fired. They're basically clearing house in New York. You walk in there, they're a bad team, need a new quarterback. Bring in Shedeur, bring in Deion, let him do whatever he wants to the Jets. Or you say, sorry, Dayball, we think you're a good coach, but your time's over. We're bringing in Shedeur, we're bringing in Deion, and the Giants are now the top. I think Deion would listen to going to New York and being in a huge market with his son and building a team. Both those guys have really good young wide receivers as well in Malik Neighbors and Garrett Wilson that you can add into. So I think both those have positive reasons in New York that maybe they could bring in a Deion as well. But those would be the places. And Dallas is going to be a name in there because it's Dallas.
Of course, just because of the connections in Dallas.
But I don't know if Jerry pulls the trigger on that one. I think he'd love to.
Not the quarterback. He can't.
And I don't think Deion leaves Colorado for the uncertainty of what Dallas is. I think he knows enough of what the show is and goes, it could be fun, but I don't have control there. Everywhere else I go, I got a bit more control. But with Jerry, at the end of the day, whatever he decides, he decides.
Yeah, I think I thought, I don't know where they're in the draft order, but if Vegas is high enough, I'd throw Vegas on there with you too, on that pile of the New York teams. Some of the same reasons that you brought up. Definitely quarterback needy. Market is a great market, glamour market
friends with Tom Brady.
Oh, the Tom Brady connection. I keep forgetting about Tom out there in the desert. I keep forgetting. Yeah, that makes it more attractive too. That I would throw Vegas out there as a team too. That, like I said, I don't look where they're on the draft order, but I could see them making that because with Deion and that that top pick at quarterback, like you said, with the New York teams, you really can steal the headlines in the market. And with Vegas, you can do that too. In Vegas, with a Dion, a team with a coach, a team that's head coached by Dion, with a sexy new quarterback in Vegas, you can put some butts in seats.
Yeah.
And in Vegas, you're competing against Vegas, right? Just to put butts in seats, and that's a sexy selling point to put butts in seats. So I agree with you on that. And I think some NFL teams will think about it. I think I would interview him. I mean, just to see what his plan is, what his vision is. But the college, I said long ago, and you guys remember me saying it on these airwaves. The team, whoever hires Dion, it didn't matter. It was a home run hire. Even if he failed, he was going to fail forward.
Yeah.
Your program was going to be so much better off. Even if he had 4-5 win seasons in the 3 years you were there, you were going to be so much better off from a promotional and marketing perspective, from the free media you were going to get, from a recruiting perspective, because he's a recruiting juggernaut, because he's so damn cool. Everybody wants to hang out with Dion. All right. Just all of that. The amount of airtime you were going to get, the national games you were going to get. I mean, Colorado is one of their games, some of the highest rated games in college football. It doesn't make sense. Last year, they didn't make a bowl game, and they had some of the highest ratings in the country. It doesn't make sense, but it's because of the cool factor with Dion, and Dion brings eyeballs that are not necessarily college football fans. They may be NFL fans, and trust me, I had to learn this too, because most of y'all are like me. Y'all are college fans and NFL fans. Not everybody is. There's some people that don't watch any NFL; they watch all college.
Yep.
There's some people that watch all that watch all NFL and don't watch any college at all.
Yep.
Like they don't know what the hell's going on in college. They're like, I don't know what's going on in college. I draft is when I start looking at college players around the draft, and I may check out the championship games and the playoffs.
Yeah.
I'm not watching college football every Saturday. I know for me, I'm like, what? That's crazy. Watching both all the time. I'm like, yeah. And to me, it naturally transitions to one. One is like, it's like one's the prequel, and then one's the sequel. It's like, I just follow the.
I guess they were on the same day. They're Saturday and Sunday for a reason.
Yeah. To me, I'm like, I don't know. To me, I'm like, how do you watch one and not the other? One's a continuation of the other. But there's some people that don't, and Dion brings that group back to college football. The ones who are only NFLers, they'll watch Dion. They're like, nah, I'm gonna check out Dion, because he's the only Pro Football Hall of Famer, guys, that's ever went back to college to coach.
Yeah.
Pro Football Hall of Famers don't do that, because they're Pro Football Hall of Famers. They don't have to do that. They don't do that. He wanted to do that. They don't have to start at that low level. The guys who start at the low level, guys, they have to start there. They didn't have to start there he had to start at the high school level, actually. And then went to historically black college. And then went to a lower tier Power 4 team. And won everywhere he went. So, like I said, I thought, man, hiring Dion was just a home run by Colorado. So they're gonna win. Even if he doesn't win the actual games, they're gonna be a better program for it. And then turns out, guy can actually coach. And turns out, we know he can recruit. And if they win the Big 12 this year, oh man, they're in.
Yeah.
Into the college football playoff. And I don't know if Colorado's gonna be able to keep him after that. Because that exceeded even my expectation. And I thought people saying he wasn't gonna make, like somebody was like, oh man, he's not gonna make a bowl game. I'm like, man, I know you guys don't like Dion, but this is y'all's hatred for Dion is ridiculous, man. It's clouding your judgment. And they got a top 3 quarterback in the country and the best football player in college football on their team in the Big 12, who most of y'all say is a weak conference. How the hell can they not make a bowl game? And now it turns out they're about to win the Big 12. I did not think they were going to win the Big 12. So I'm not saying I predicted that. But I definitely wasn't in the camp saying, oh, Dion's going to fail miserably. They're going to be terrible. I'm like, I don't see how y'all can look at that team and say that. And he's Dion. He can always recruit good players. Good players are always going to want to play for Dion. Always. No matter how bad he trashed the last group, and no matter how many guys he kicked out of the program, and no matter what he said to your mama, and no matter what it is that you don't like about Dion, he's always going to be able to recruit good players because he's cool. He's cool. He's cool in every coach in college football. There's no coach in college football cooler than Deion Sanders. Not one. They're not. Because they can't walk into a living room and go, I'm a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I'm a Hall of Famer. You want to go to the league? I'm a Hall of Famer. I talk to all the greatest players of all time. I got Jerry Rice in my phone. You want me to talk to Jerry Rice? Who you want to talk to? Who you want to talk to in the NFL right now? Because I got all their numbers because they all answer my call because I'm Dion. So who you want to talk to? Like seriously, that's he can say that. Nobody else can walk to your living room and say, "Who do you want to talk to? Who's your favorite player in the league?" Oh man, my favorite player in the league. I love Matt Stafford. Matt, hey, let me text Matt Stafford real quick. Dion's the only one that can do that. None of these other coaches can do that. He does that kind of stuff when he talks to a player. Close the deal. Some players, some coach, Sykes got some of that. He can call his players. He can go call Bijan and some other guys. That's cool. Not like Dion.
No.
It's different. So I don't know. College gives him, but I'll say so. College gives him an advantage that, like I just described, an advantage no other coach has. He goes to the NFL, he don't really have that advantage. He's got a huge advantage in college in recruiting. That cool factor, it's currency.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't really have that in the NFL.
Just hope Dan Lanning doesn't go anywhere.
I'm with you. That's a nightmare. That's nightmare fuel. Even if you're in Texas, you need to worry about that.
Just telling you.
Dion at Oregon?
That's what. Yeah, I was talking to somebody about that, and you went Dan Lanning and go, who would they get to replace him? You're like,
yeah, that's scary. Him at Florida was kind of scary to me too. I was thinking him at Florida would be scary. Back in Florida State, it's a little bit scary, but Oregon, that's the scariest.
Yes,
that is Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th type stuff right there, man. That's a horror show. All right, we come back. We'll get into Rod's rant, even though that was kind of Rod's rant. We'll talk about this Joe Douglas firing for the Jets, Jets. All that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right. Welcome back to the Rodcast. Let's talk some NFL here. The Jets continue to be an mess. They fired their GM yesterday, Joe Douglas, and this is after firing Robert Saleh earlier in the season. And at this point, I talk about the Holy Trinity all the time, right? You got to get the GM right, head coach, quarterback. Your GM almost plays matchmaker, right? You get your GM right, and your GM's going to play matchmaker to you. Now, there's certain situations where it doesn't work out, where the GM hires the head coach, and then they pick the quarterback. Hell, the 49ers were kind of like that, right? The 49ers, Shano chooses John Lynch, essentially, and he's got a lot of power and control. So not every organization works that chain of command quite like that, but I think ultimately you want to hire the GM, and GM hires the head coach and GM work together, and they pick the quarterback. They think it's going to be right for the team to accomplish vision. That's ideally how you'd like it to go, but it doesn't always work out that way. But they fired their head coach already. Now they're firing the GM, and all that's left is Aaron Rodgers. And then we talked about how they double down on Aaron Rodgers, because initially, when they had Robert Saleh as the head coach and Nathaniel Hackett was the OC, and he was basically just a curator for the Aaron Rodgers offense. Right? They brought him in just to, hey, this guy knows the Aaron Rodgers offense. He knows how to teach it. He knows the terminology. And, Aaron really is calling the plays, and he's the coordinator, but this guy in title will come in and logistically can handle the coordination of the offense, because Aaron don't want to do that. He just want to come in, and he knows the plays and calls the plays. And that didn't work out for him. And remember, they were thinking about demoting Nathaniel Hackett. And then that's when Robert Saleh ended up being fired, when the conversation started within the organization to demote Nathaniel Hackett. And then they fired Robert Saleh. Nathaniel Hackett still ended up getting demoted. And now they're deciding, you know what? We don't like the vision, period. Somebody's got to pay for this experiment being a failure. Because ultimately we decided to double down on Aaron Rodgers as the guy. We brought in Devontae Adams, right? Aaron said he needed another weapon. Brought in Devontae Adams. We brought in all of Aaron Rodgers' friends to help him. All right, turn this offense into an offense that can help us win some games. And truth is, the experiment is just not working. At this point, I think we can all agree experiment is a failure. Somebody's got to pay the price for this failed experiment, and it ain't going to be the owner, because he's the owner. So GM, this is you. We don't know who came up with the Aaron Rodgers plan, but Joe Douglas, it was your job to make sure it worked, to make sure that the plan worked and was successful, and it wasn't. And ultimately, when you get fired as a GM, I say it's not your fault, but some of these things are your responsibility. It probably ain't his fault they brought in Aaron Rodgers. It seems like the owner really wanted Aaron Rodgers in there at the time, and I don't know if it was his idea or the owner's idea, but it was his responsibility to make sure that it was successful. I think that's why they kept doubling down, right? Bringing in more of his players, bringing in Devontae Adams and trading for him. He had to make sure the experiment worked, because he understood my job is on the line. At this point where we are, I got to make sure this thing works. And at this point, it just has not. And he's responsible for the quarterback draft, the Zach Wilson, and the hiring of Robert Saleh. And those, I think, are the two main factors in him being relieved of his duty or being fired. The quarterback and the head coach. Remember, I said usually in the Holy Trinity, GM hires the head coach. They both pick the quarterback. Head coach has already been fired for his role in this disaster. And now time to look at the GM, who is responsible, whether it's your fault or not, for the success of the head coach. And if it's for the success of that first round pick at quarterback and Zach Wilson, both were failed experiments. And I think what they were hoping was that Aaron Rodgers would give them new life, and it has not. It turns out Woody Johnson, the owner, he wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers. This came out in The Athletic, actually. It said here the coaches had been called in to explain what happened with their units during the 10-9 home loss to the Broncos. During the meeting, Johnson suggested to the coaches that they bench Aaron Rodgers in favor of Tyrod Taylor because he felt Rodgers' performance was holding the team back. The coaches and Douglas stunned at the suggestion, talked him out of it and convinced Johnson to stay the course, and that benching Rodgers with his pedigree 4 games into the season would not sit well with the locker room. The coaches also felt it would embarrass Rodgers. The idea of benching a future Hall of Famer sounded so absurd that one coach asked whether the owner was serious. Multiple sources from the meeting believed he was. Johnson was calm that day, but that set the tone for what happened a week later. On October 8th, Johnson made the decision to fire Saleh without consulting his general manager, according to this article. So Woody Johnson just went on the
Woody
wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers. He was that upset.
No, he's Woody Johnson has not a great track record as the owner of the Jets, of a guy who is that, where it's here, I have the solution. Okay, well, that solution is probably not going to work. Don't tell me how to do my business. That solution didn't work. Well, then do this. Well, that's not going to work. Well, you were wrong about that. I was like, no, I was dead on right. You were wrong about that. Nope, I'm the owner. I'm a billionaire, so it doesn't matter.
I mean, what you can't tell him he's wrong. He is. Yeah. I mean, even when he's wrong, he's right.
No, he inherited a lot of money, so he's clearly
so he's smarter than the rest of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's that they have problems from the top down, and I mean, you can't wait till Jordan Love ends up there. Just all the Packers quarterbacks end up going to the Jets at some point.
Wow. Yeah, the Packers will draft somebody else. In the next 4 years, they'll draft another first-round quarterback and let them move on to the Jets. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. That's wild that the Jets have gotten the basically the leftovers are the last remnants of the Green Bay Packers quarterbacks. So
twice,
you go from the organization.
Either time.
I know, and the organization that has the best track record for quarterback development. Like that, I mean, talking about a superb track record. The actual organization that actually knows what they're doing and invests in quarterback development, and yet they end up sending off the last remnant of their veteran franchise quarterbacks to the Jets, who arguably have some of the worst, if not the worst, track record of developing quarterbacks.
Yeah, and by the way,
the Browns, I guess, are also in that conversation. Right.
And by the way, yesterday the Packers announced Mark Murphy's going into the Packers Hall of Fame. So just let you know how 2 organizations are run. That the guy who decided to move on from Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers was calling out and trying to get fired, going into the Packers Hall of Fame. And and the guy who took on Aaron Rodgers has now fired everyone who told him not to do it.
Yeah. No doubt. I remember when people thought Brian Gutekunst, the GM for the Packers, like, oh, that guy's going to be fired because he was at odds with Aaron Rodgers. Now everybody's like, the guy's a genius. The guy's a freaking genius. But it's. I always say this, about, and this is a great tweet to summarize. I think I got it from Pat Thorman. He says, not all dysfunctional teams have meddlesome owners, but all meddlesome owners have dysfunctional teams. You're going to Woody Johnson, and then of course there are the comments filled with Jerry Jones references, the Browns, Haslam, and Dave Tepper, the Panthers owner too. I mean, it starts from the top down. For the Cowboys, it's a little different because their owner is also the general manager of the team, and we talked about this yesterday. And picking the right head coach. You got to get the Holy Trinity right, and the Jets did not. I mean, the Jets really screwed up. But I will say he had a lot of he drafted really well.
Yeah, he did.
He drafted really well, and we talked about this yesterday with the Steelers and in that division. Steelers are probably the least talented team in that division, but the best overall team. He just had a collection of talent. And they never really became a team.
No, I mean, and that's the get rid of Robert Saleh. They were 2-3 when they got rid of Robert Saleh. They went 1-5 in the next 6 games, which unfortunately that one was the Texans, but
Texans,
that game.
Wow.
That Halloween game.
Just reminded me of that. Yeah.
That's the one win that they've had since they fired Robert Saleh. But they're 1-6 since, so it's like, well, that didn't work either. Getting rid of him, changing the offensive coordinator. None of it has worked.
None of it's worked. Yeah. You guys might as well just accept your fate at this point. It failed. It's a failed experiment. You got to start all over now.
Yeah.
Now you're starting all over. You got to draft a quarterback and everything. You got to start all over from scratch. And you need to go hire a new GM, hire a new head coach. They can start the process of the Holy Trinity. Get it right.
You can,
Texans
except
right.
if the Holy Trinity's there, And then when somebody thinks they're God above it, none of it matters.
The problem is that the God that Woody Johnson thinks he is, he's the one that has to choose it. So
and he's the one who comes down and says, your decision's wrong, and I'm doing this. I'm benching that guy.
Yeah.
You go, oh, well, all those you're not supposed to touch.
You're supposed to let them do their thing. But no, you're right about that. They're kind of in the same boat with the Cowboys. With that, is they're only going to make the right choice.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later on too, because I want to talk Cowboys coming up. But first, let's get to the topic. Let's get to the what the facts, what the stats segment coming up here on the show. And I got some NFL factoids and also some college football factoids to share right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time for what the facts, what the stats. Got a couple of factoids here and some stats to share with you guys. All right, how about this little fact? Oh, how about these facts right here? Just show you how wild college football is. So Oklahoma State is 0-7 in Big 12 play. Like, I don't even know how it got so bad for Mike Gundy. I think Mike Gundy is a good coach, but man, it is right now imploding fast, and I think a lot of it is based on his lack of progressive, beliefs in the transfer portal and the NIL. Like he has really just no, in my opinion, I think he just doesn't have a modern approach to building a football team with the new landscape of college football. But anyway, Oklahoma State 0-7 in Big 12 play. They beat Arkansas though. USC is 3-5 in Big 10, but they beat LSU. Cal is 1-5 in ACC. They beat Auburn, who's going to play against the Aggies this weekend. Remember Vanderbilt lost to Georgia State early in the season? Georgia State is 0-6 in the Sun Belt. And I bet Vandy is kicking themselves for losing that damn game.
Yeah.
It is it's just so wild. It's just another example of how crazy and wild college football is overall. Can't believe Oklahoma State's that bad in Big 12 play this year in the new look Big 12. All right. A couple of other factoids here for you and what the facts, what the stats. How about this one? And I couldn't believe Texas has to play Kentucky coming up. And I actually couldn't believe this. And I saw it retweeted by Brian Davis, but it's from originally John Hale. He covers the University of Kentucky for the Lexington Herald Leader. So I wanted to make sure that he was a legit reporter. He claims that Saturday's game will be the furthest west Kentucky has ever played a football game. That basically when they travel to Austin, he claims it's the furthest west they've ever played a football game.
That's not that far west. You've never scheduled a non-conference further away than that?
That's what he claims. Yeah.
Wow.
He had an article at Kentucky.com. See, I said, seems impossible. But so it's, I don't know when that happens sometimes in the SEC, I guess, because we were talking about that with Georgia a few years ago too, with one of their games. But anyway, that's like I said, that's a factoid that I thought was unbelievable, almost seemed fake, but I had to go check the source to make sure, and the source says that it's legit. All right, another what the facts, what the stats here. I got another factor for you, and then we'll take the break. Max Olson has what he calls his stop rate. It is the amount of drives that the defense can force a punt, force a punt or get a takeaway or a turnover on downs. I think it's turnover on downs, punt, or takeaway. Like those are the three categories. How often a defense can force those. Texas is fourth right now in the country in stop rate. 79% of their defensive drives end in a punt, a takeaway, or a turnover on downs. It's pretty damn good. It's really good. Actually, Notre Dame leads the way, 81.7%. Ohio State is tied with Notre Dame, 81.7%. And then Army at 80.6% are the only teams ahead of Texas. Tennessee right behind Texas, actually, is 77.8%. They're playing good football. James Madison is number 6 on this list, 76%. Ole Miss at 75%. So you got some teams that are right. Indiana's at 74%. They're really impressive. Alabama is number 9 at 74% as well. All right, there you go. So what the facts, what the stats. We come back. We'll dive into the college football playoff rankings, the latest installment of the college football playoff rankings. We'll also hear from Mike Elko. Turns out he had a Freudian slip. Ooh, that was a bad one. That went viral. Longhorn fans will be really interested in that. We'll talk about that too and hear from Mike Ilko on the other side. We got Behind the Burnt Orange Curtain. We'll talk a little bit about Texas versus Kentucky. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a One Artist Wednesday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire Patrick Davis, he comes up with all the musically themed days of the week. But on a One Artist Wednesday, he goes deep down the rabbit hole into one specific artist group or band's catalog. And today it is the great Joe Walsh, who is celebrating 77 years, and he is now going to be the featured artist of our One Artist Wednesday. So we appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. Also, we appreciate Patrick coming up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, which is already posted at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll today. How many rushing yards will Texas have against Kentucky? We gave you a couple options: 0 to 100, 100 to 130, 130 to 160, and 160 plus. Right now, 100 to 130 is winning with 48% of the vote, 33%, 130 to 160, 160 plus at 12%, and 7% for 0 to 100.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not really, like I said, when the running game gets going is really going to be key. I mean, I think Texas can run the ball right now. They run the ball when they need to, but they don't start out trying to run the football. They set the tone with the pass. And then as Sark is tinkering with things and troubleshooting with things, he finds certain concepts that work in the run game. So I'm just not sure when it's going to get going versus Kentucky. Maybe it gets going from the jump. Maybe get going from, first quarter. That's the case. You can get 150 something rushing yards.
Well, I mean, just remember, we got 210 against Florida, and that was 100 in the fourth quarter or something.
Yeah, it was all in the fourth quarter.
Jared Gibson had 100 yards. And so you can get a lot of yardage if you're up. So if you think Texas is up in this game, you're going to run the ball more in that second half and fourth quarter.
Yeah. Yep. Like I said, but that's, I think that's how Sark wants to close games ideally anyway, right? He wants to close the run. Yeah. We've talked about that. So I know you're going to be running it late, regardless of whether because I don't assume you're going to be down or it'll be competitive late. So I know you're going to be running it late. My point is, to get to those really high totals, and you're right, you could just do it against, like, you got 100-something yards from Jared Gibson all in the fourth quarter. But to get to those higher totals, if it starts early, starts in the second, then I think, you got a better chance than rather Sark having to get into it after halftime, after they've already established themselves with the pass. So it's all if Sark wants to intentionally go out there and establish the run. If that's part of his mindset and part of the original game plan. Usually it's not a part of the game script to establish the run. That has not been Sark's MO. Could he break tendency? Yes. If that is the weakness of the Kentucky defense, he could break tendency there. But I'm not sure if he's going to break tendency in that manner. Really, I'm not really sure about that because, like I said, that hasn't been the case all season long. No, I don't see that starting up versus Kentucky, but we shall see. All right, so that's the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Go vote on it at the Horn ATX on X. We will talk about the college football playoff rankings that came out yesterday. It's the latest installment of the college football playoff rankings. The Longhorns are at number 3 in the latest college football playoff rankings. We'll talk about that and break that down here coming up momentarily. We're also going to hear from the Aggie head coach, Mike Elko. He had a bit of a Freudian slip that went viral. So Longhorn fans have been having some fun with that. So we'll have some fun with it as well and play that audio for you coming up. Speaking of that Texas A&M game, if the Aggies don't Aggie it up, and if the Longhorns take care of business this weekend versus Kentucky, you're talking about that being one of the biggest games in the history of the Texas A&M rivalry, the 100+ year history of it. There's maybe only one other Texas A&M game that is going to be as big or of the magnitude that this one, if both teams take care of business, the magnitude of this one. They've already announced the start time. It's going to be a 6:30 kickoff, so you'll get your night game in prime time, but you also could get SEC title implications and, of course, college football playoff implications with that matchup. So we'll talk about that too coming up. But first, before we get into the college football playoff rankings, we got behind the Burners curtain coming up next segment. So we'll talk more Texas versus Kentucky. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Mavericks blew out the Pelicans 132-91 last night. 8 Mavericks finished with double-digit points as Dallas shot over 50% from the field for the game. The Spurs picked up a 110-104 win over the Thunder with the Spurs' top 3 scorers out of the game. Keldon Johnson went off in the second quarter and ended up with 22 points to lead the way for the Spurs. Both teams are now 1-1 in NBA Cup play. Tonight, the Rockets take on the Pacers in Houston. Texas women's basketball will host their annual 40 Acres Field Trip Day today with upwards of 5,000 kids in attendance from local schools as the Longhorns take on Tarleton State. The game takes place at 11 a.m. at the Moody Center. In the NFL, the Jets have fired general manager Joe Douglas after 5+ seasons. The move comes 6 weeks after the Jets fired coach Robert Saleh and have gone 1-5 in that span. Phil Savage is now the interim GM. And in college football, the latest college football playoff rankings were released with no change to the top 5, leaving Texas at number 3. After BYU's loss to Boise State, Boise State has now claimed the last bye as the higher-ranked conference champion. Tennessee, SMU, Colorado, and Clemson are your first 4 out of the playoffs as it stands today. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. I appreciate those. Yes, and the Longhorns at number 3 in the latest college football playoff rankings. There are some Longhorn fans who are becoming a bit paranoid about the possibility of the Longhorns losing another game. And if they do, in fact, take another loss, would they still get into the college football playoff? I am of the opinion that they will, but I get why Longhorn fans are still paranoid. And by the way, we shouldn't even have to discuss this because if Texas wins, then it's a moot point. Just win, baby. We don't have to worry about it. But the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Rhythm Styles, Cardi B Styles, Megan Thee Stallion, but is if they do take another loss, I still think they'll find a way to get Texas in. And we'll get into that a little bit. But the reason that it is right now a topic of conversation among Longhorn fans is because if you do lose another game, then you're going to be lumped into that 2-loss group of SEC teams. And right now, of that group of 2-loss SEC teams, you have the weakest resume among the group, or at least the Longhorns have among the weakest resume of that group. And when Ward Manuel was asked about, what separates those teams right now, what separates that group right now, those 8-2 teams, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, he said, well, one, they had, he's talking about, those teams. He said, I think the committee, we debated, as I said earlier, quite a bit as it came down to how we saw those teams, but they have beaten each other at different times. So we have to look at Alabama the last 3 games, particularly the 2 before they played Mercer. They won in dominant fashion, and we were really impressed with their win at LSU 2 weeks ago. It is close. There's a lot of conversations. We'll continue to monitor the performance of these teams as the season progresses towards the end. So if you are in that position, he is saying that the way you win, the style points matter. That's what he's saying. That's what separated Alabama among that group. Alabama right now is among the college football playoff rankings. They are 7th among that group. So they are your highest ranked 2-loss team. And so he's saying 2-loss teams, they like how they played recently and the style points matter. So this kind of goes back to what I'm saying about Texas. If they take another loss, and I don't think they will, not saying they will, but people are having the conversation now about whether that second loss would bump Texas out of the playoff. I think they'll find a data point or data points, just like this data point for Alabama here, to get Texas in, because I think the data, like I said, whatever data points they value that justify their decision, just like why they think Alabama is the best 2-loss team. Oh, they've looked better. They've looked better down the stretch, the style points. So I'm not saying that that's not true, but I think depending on what team they want to promote, what team they want in to the college football playoff, they can pick any data point they want to.
Yeah.
And then they can just focus on that data point. And I think here's another example for Texas, right? People have been harping on Texas not having quality wins. Texas doesn't have a quality win. They don't have a quality win over currently a ranked opponent, and they don't. because Vanderbilt is no longer ranked, and that was what people saw as a quality win. I guess a quality win would be a win over a currently ranked team. That would be a quality win. But they have a stat, or at least a data point, that the committee is considering. They call it a key win. And when they posted the graphic up during the college football playoff show, they said Texas had 2 key wins. And one of their key wins is Vanderbilt, and the other key win is at Arkansas. At Vandy, at Arkansas are their key wins. And Tennessee fans are saying, hold up, that's a quality, that's basically a key win for them, is at Arkansas, and yet they are getting penalized for it being a bad loss for them. But hey, wins are valued different than losses. You can always be like, hey, they're valued and defined. My point is, they are giving themselves a lot of latitude.
Yeah.
They are not they are not trying to be very specific, and they are not trying to nail down what data points are prioritized and ranked over other data points. They're not. They're all over the place, actually, in that, which I think is intentional so that they can give themselves room to justify whatever 12-team playoff they want. Like I said, we know some of what we know. They love the Big Ten. The Big Ten is 4 of your top 5 teams are Big Ten teams. So they love the Big Ten. Whatever is about the Big Ten, they're big fans of it. And that could be interesting too, depending on what happens with Indiana. If Indiana ends up beating Ohio State, which if that happens, Ohio State would have 2 losses, but 2 losses to top 5.
Yeah.
4
so
teams.
Ohio State's in basically at this
feels
point.
like that.
Unless they lose to Michigan. Unless Michigan somehow comes out and beats Ohio State, that's your only way Ohio State's out, because if they lose this, they're out of the Big Ten championship game. So they only have 2 losses. They're in with 2 losses. If they win this and then lose in the Big Ten championship game, they have 2 losses. They're in, because one of their losses comes to a top team. That second loss comes to a top team. Their other loss is Oregon. They're in. It just is the way it is. They're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And their one big win is Penn State.
And Penn State? What's Penn State's big win? Did we decide what Penn
State's big win was Illinois.
Illinois. It was ranked 25th, I think, in the latest college football playoff
so
rankings.
It's all kind of it's all kind of shoddy because where everybody is and what you think it is. Sark, I know, dropped his little bit of politicking in on Monday, which was he was asked about it, and his basic bit of politicking was, we haven't run up the score. There's a right way and a wrong way to play football. In the last 2 weeks, we kneeled the ball.
He did. He could have kicked the field.
It's like we nailed the ball with inside the 20 in the last couple of weeks. It's like we could have scored on either one of those to run up the score to make our wins look better. We don't do that. We didn't do that. So that was his little bit of politicking of, even though some of our wins aren't as big, we did win bigger, and we chose not to.
We want classy points. We want points for class.
I'm just saying, don't take us away for not winning big if we didn't. But I'm just saying that's because politics, is you could tell him saying, I know that someone will say, well, they only beat Arkansas by 10. You go, well, we beat them by 17 if we wanted to.
That's fair.
That's true. I think there was just that little bit of it. He didn't do much, but that was that little bit you knew.
I like that. That was good. That's something Mike Brown would have said too.
Exactly. It's way more political than we've seen Kirby Smart, who has just come out, and Kirby is constantly pissed off now.
It's just Kirby. Just Kirby's demeanor during the disposition during football season. He's kind of like that. But no, that's a great point. I agree with you. And that's what I say. I think for Texas, they'll find a way to get Texas in. They want the big ratings. Texas is a ratings monster. If there's a way, if there's a path to get Texas in, they will clear the path. For Texas to get in. I know some people say that's wrong, and I know there'll be the haters, the Texas haters, who will be like, well, that's not fair. That's the privilege that we always complain about with Texas. And you would be right. You'd be correct. I am banking on that privilege. I am banking on them and the brand, the power of the brand, and them saying, no, we want Texas in, because Texas brings eyeballs and storylines, and we want Texas in the first 12-team playoff. If, like I said, if there is a path, and basically I think if they're a 2-loss team, they can find a way to justify it. Now, who are they going to shaft to make that happen? I don't know. I think you'll get 8 teams in from the Big Ten and from the SEC.
And that's what I'm saying. I think there is a scenario where Texas gets left out. And that's your nightmare scenario, which is you lose to the Aggies and the Aggies win the SEC championship. I think then the Aggies jump you
and take your spot, basically.
And basically take your spot. So I think Texas or Texas A&M gets in. And so if you beat the Aggies, they don't get in. They're not in the SEC championship. They're not there. But if the Aggies beat you, they're in the SEC championship. And then they go on to, and if they win that, then they're in.
Yeah. Because the Aggies are at 15 now. Is that what
they're
at?
15. They're a 2-loss team. And
so
I don't know if there's
out.
any way you could justify the Texas being in over them if they had just beat Texas at the end of the year. I don't know if you can justify that.
It would be really tough.
So who else do you knock out at that point? Because Georgia's beating them too. If Georgia wins, like there's no other way you can. I don't know if there's a way you can make that work.
I agree with you on that. That's why that game is
so important.
That's why it's even bigger. Yeah, that game is huge. It really, I can't remember one that with that much on the line in my lifetime. If both teams take care of business, and I think 1975 would be the only time you got to go back to a matchup between Texas A&M where there have been more at stake between the two teams. But yeah, so you're right about that. I agree with you on that situation for the Longhorns. The hope is that, hey, you don't have to worry about any of this. But if you do lose to the Aggies, Aggies go win the SEC title, that would be a problem.
That'd be a real problem. Yeah, it'd be a real problem. And if anybody missed that too, they announced yesterday that it is a night game. It's a 6:30 game.
Yes.
So that was announced yesterday.
And I mean, I think we all knew that was coming. Once the Aggies had established themselves as being pretty good, they wanted to make that game a prime time game.
We all knew it was coming. Just stating, it's official now. Yes, it is a 6:30 game. It's a night game. It is going to be the premier game of that week. I assume game day will be there in College Station. I'm assuming this is going to be a big, big game.
Game day will definitely be there for that matchup. And the hope is that the Aggies are trying to get their 10th win in that game, and the Longhorns would have already gotten their 10th win of the season over Kentucky. And you would have, two. What would the Aggies be ranked by then? They probably think they'd be ranked in the top 12 by then.
It depends if anybody loses in front of them.
Depends on it. You need an upset or two. They need an upset or two to take a huge leap in the rankings there. They need one of those. Oh, BYU could lose though. BYU's playing Arizona State.
That's true.
Believe. They could lose. I hadn't looked at the schedules for the rest of those teams, but they could lose before that matchup. And probably a couple other teams.
I mean, Ole Miss is playing Florida. Florida has been playing better the last couple of weeks.
Is playing better.
Ole Miss is clearly not bulletproof.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that one's one you could jump in there. I mean, they could jump SMU technically. They wanted to jump them in front of SMU. People are not a fan of them.
Honestly, who's Notre Dame playing late? Notre Dame always got big games late.
Notre Dame's playing Army this week, USC next week.
Oh, Army. And USC can still pull it up.
It's a rivalry game.
Yeah. And Army's good.
Army's number 19 in the country, 9-0.
Yeah, that's
6 o'clock. So that's a big game as well. So yeah, if Army was to pull off the upset, that moves down. But I mean, Army may jump them too if that point happens, because Army would then be 10-0.
Wow, that is crazy. We're not. There are some really great Cinderella stories this year that we just have not paid enough attention to. And I promise I'll do a research on Cinderella stories. It's not we get close to the college playoff, because that is one. The Army, that's definitely one of those Cinderella stories. That is a wild story. And honestly, the best Cinderella story is definitely Indiana. I mean, it's not even close. Indiana's a basketball school. Has been a basketball school.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point there were discussions about them divesting in the football program because it just wasn't even worth it for them because they were getting no return on their investment in terms of wins or even financially. And now they got Kurt Signetti in there, and their team is undefeated. And by the way, even though this has become a big topic of conversation, they intentionally basically made their schedule easier. This was actually something they did they commissioned a study. No joke. It was actually in this Yahoo Sports article that they actually commissioned a study. They said a comprehensive study that the university commissioned on this football program produced an area needing improvement. And it said scheduling was the biggest glaring issue for them. They said it was time to schedule more strategically. So, for instance, Dolson says Indiana was originally scheduled to play at Louisville this season. They paid $1 million to cancel the game, replacing an ACC opponent on the road for an FCS opponent at home, Western Illinois, who they beat 77-3. And Dolson says, an official with them says that's part of the plan. So that was all strategically part of the plan for them to loosen up their schedule, or at least for them to make their schedule as easy as possible. And the strange thing is that may be the one thing that holds them back this year. If if they end up losing a game, that they're
let's put
going
it
to
this way: if they lose by 20 points to Ohio State, if you just get blown out by Ohio State, then you don't get to be in the playoff. I think if you're Indiana, I think that pretty much ends your season, right?
That's the penalty for it.
Yeah, which is you can't play. Because even at the end of the day, if you look at Texas, you can say, well, they scheduled Michigan, so you can make an argument that there was an effort. And we know that they actually have said in years past, we want you to schedule good non-conference. And so the fact that they're scheduling good non-conference is at least some point of factor in it. So if you're scheduling FCS instead of FBS, that may dock you some points. But yeah, I think if you just lose to Ohio State, it worked. You're probably still in the playoff.
Yeah.
But if it's bad, if Ohio State goes in and just tees off on you.
Yeah. You can't get mollywopped in that game. You can't. But Indiana has lost 28 straight games to Ohio State. And won just 12 of their last 98 meetings. The Buckeyes have twice the number of all-time wins as Indiana, 39 conference titles to 2. And they produced 4 times the number of NFL draft picks. I mean, this is straight up David versus Goliath. This because the great thing about Indiana, they are literally a Cinderella story because of all the guys that he brought from James Madison with him. When Kurt Signetti came over, he's actually some people have criticized this method, but we've seen it more and more with coaches just bringing their guys with them. Deion Sanders brought his son and brought other players with him to Colorado. We saw Lincoln Riley bring a lot of players with him, kind of gut a program to bring players with him. They had 27 transfers in this last class. 21 of them came from the FCS, our Group of 5 level. 13 of those came from James Madison with Signetti. Think about identifying that kind of talent when you're finding guys from the FCS and Group of 5 level who you know can play at the highest levels of college football. And see, there is something. I mean, that's what Deion did. I mean, Deion's son was in a historically black college, right? He didn't get any scholarship offers, and now he's going to be the number 1 overall pick at quarterback.
Yeah, first quarterback taken, most likely.
We've seen more of these stories, right? Baker Mayfield's a story like that. Baker Mayfield's the first walk-on ever to be drafted number 1 overall.
Right. What do you say about evaluating talent at quarterback?
Very few do it well. Very few know how to evaluate the quarterback position. Even fewer know how to coach it. It seems more and more obvious every day, don't it? And he's got his quarterback. He brought his quarterback with him, did he not? Frank Signetti. He brought O'Rourke, I believe is his name. He brought him with him from James Madison, and now he's playing really well at the highest level. I just think our perception of how not competitive, but the power bases of college football, and our perception of who basically who the power players are, I think is a little bit off sometimes. Right? Think about it. We criticize the Pac-12 for not being competitive. Oregon goes into the Pac-12 first year in the Big Ten from the Pac-12, and they're the best team in the Big Ten. We talked about how the Pac-12 couldn't measure up. We talked about how the Big 12 couldn't measure up. Texas goes into the SEC in their first year. They're going to win the SEC potentially. Look at the teams in the Big 12. The Pac-12 teams coming over. They've had a lot of success in the Big 12, which was considered to be a more competitive league than the Pac-12. Are they really that much more competitive? Or am I just talking about the main power players in those conferences? Oregon, Texas coming over, Utah coming over, or Colorado wasn't considered a power player, but Dion, I think, makes them a unique case because of what he brings to the table. I don't know. I just think we need to almost reassess, reevaluate how we view the power structure in college football and how we view the really the power players and the base of it. Because I don't know if it's as cut and dry as we thought it would be. We thought there would be a separation of the have and have-nots, clear definition. These teams are better because they can afford to be better. They can pay for all the talent, and it's not really happening like that.
No, and I mean,
Indiana's a great idea of it, or Army's a great example of it.
But I mean, even if you look at a guy like DJ Uiagalelei, who plays, he's a disappointment at Clemson. He goes to Oregon State. All of a sudden, everybody thinks he looks a lot better, and people start saying this guy's going to be really good. He goes to Florida State, and he's awful again.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, you're getting a guy that you see and you think that you can be this great quarterback that's going to save your team, and then he gets paid all this money and it doesn't work. Doesn't work in your system. Doesn't work with your coaching. Doesn't work against the defenses you're playing, whatever it is, and you just get and you're back out of it. And that team that you stole the quarterback from has the next guy in line, and they run a system that's more quarterback friendly, and it works, and they can put the next person in. UNLV has the quarterback who walks away and says he doesn't get his money, and UNLV's a ranked team right now.
Got Brendan Marion, former Texas coach, as the OC there, and they're killing it. You're right.
They're a ranked team again, after all that trauma, Sluka at the beginning of the season, and we all talked about that.
They're obviously not spending a ton of money in NIL because that's what the issue was about. Yeah, they're winning games. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I think we thought it would be cut and dry and pretty black and white. And college football is not going to have the parity anymore. All these teams are going to dominate. Maybe we were off about that.
Yeah,
maybe there'll always be some form of parity because honestly, mistaken evaluations on players, systems that are not compatible with the skill sets, good coaching versus bad coaching, better coaching at the lower levels, good coaching,
good culture versus bad culture. Where you're at a smaller school, it's easier to have a better culture than it is at a major school where the expectations are so high.
Yep.
Where, it's easier to have a good culture when you walk off and everyone loves you because you're a 5-win, 6-win team. You're bowl eligible and everybody loves you. But if you go to Nebraska and you're an 8-win team, you're a failure.
Yeah.
It's just hard to keep that positive, good culture going.
Yep. It's all about perspective on that. Like I said, I just don't. One thing I'm observing this college football season, not as cut as dry as we all thought it would be at one point. But yeah, I think quarterback has a lot to do with it too. The accessibility, now being able to access those quarterbacks, like we're talking about, that has I think a huge part of it. Oh, and by the way, my bad, I was wrong. Rourke did not come from James Madison with Cignetti. He came from Ohio, I believe. He was like a Ohio Bobcat or something like that. But he was one of the transfers they brought in, but he didn't come with Cignetti, so I was wrong about that. But a lot of those guys did come with Cignetti, and that's another, I think, blueprint now with the new era of college sports that we're seeing more and more. When you do take a job and you're bringing guys with you, even if you just take a job as an assistant, guys are taking guys with them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at what Johnny Nansen did here at Texas.
Look at Vanderbilt.
Get Vanderbilt. Yeah, that's exactly right. Right? They took the OC, Jerry Kill was the assistant he's the assistant head coach, I think, with Vandy. He was the head coach there in Minnesota. You're right. That's definitely part of it now. Like, hey man, we can all go. Y'all can all be. I'm getting a promotion, and I'm bringing y'all with me.
Yeah,
I'm taking all y'all with me.
Hell, Texas when they hired Sark, Jeff Banks is still here.
Yeah, oh no, he definitely.
He's still got that connection.
You're right, because he brought a lot of the staff. To the point where I think Nick Saban was a little bit, he's a little bit upset.
He brought a lot of staff, and then he still is pulling players from transfers from Alabama.
Yeah, no, it is. It's like I said, it works. I think we're starting to see like now it can help you turn it around quickly. Didn't work really for Lincoln Riley earlier. I don't know what's going on with Lincoln Riley and USC, but definitely seen it work at Indiana. Definitely seen it work with Colorado too. All right, there you go. We'll get to the sound of Mike Elko on the other side when we talk about the Longhorns' upcoming opponent, Kentucky, but also their upcoming opponent on the schedule after the Kentucky Wildcats. Texas A&M. You're supposed to be focused on the week to week, but maybe the Aggies are a bit distracted with the big game coming up, big rivalry game coming up versus the Longhorns. There's some evidence of it with a Freudian slip. Mike Elko, we'll talk about that and also get into some other discussion items about the Longhorns. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Let's tell you about my friend and dentist, Dr. Greg Eckert, and his fantastic team. I owe them a huge debt of gratitude. I initially went there just for a routine cleaning and a checkup, but during that checkup, they were so thorough. In fact, they found that all of my wisdom teeth were growing in sideways. They were doing all types of damage. I was on the verge of a disastrous situation, and trust me, folks, I had grown concerned. I was stressing out about it, but there was no need to stress because I was in great hands with Dr. Eckert and his team. They acted quickly, made sure that I was educated and informed about the process. More importantly, made sure I was comfortable with the process. Got the procedure scheduled. I was back at work within a couple of days after having everything done. And because of Dr. Eckert and his team, my dental health and dental hygiene have never been better. And thanks to them, folks, my dental health is right now great, and it can be the same for you. No matter what your situation is, hopefully for you, it's not as drastic as having all of your wisdom teeth removed. Hopefully it's something relatively simple and routine, but if it is a very serious issue, you're in great hands with Dr. Eckert and his team. So if it's any general dentistry or teeth whitening or porcelain crowns, veneers, dental implants, full mouth reconstruction, even root canal therapy, whatever it takes to ensure you're getting the best quality dental care available, that's what Dr. Eckert and his team are all about. And right now, thanks to Dr. Eckert and his team, you can get a brand new smile in just 1 day, permanently secured to your dental implants. No time spent without teeth. You'll get temporary fixtures until they complete your permanent smile, and you'll smile again with confidence and eat freely without pain or discomfort. We're talking about a lifelike permanent solution. So if you've been told your teeth need to be replaced, don't stress out, don't freak out. Just call Dr. Eckert today. It's learn about this revolutionary alternative to dentures. It's a brand new smile in just 1 day. It sounds too good to be true. It's not. It's just Dr. U. So give them a call today. 512-345-3166. That's 512-345-3166. Or visit dreckert.com. DRUECKERT.com. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some Texas football conversation as we step behind the burnt orange curtain. But first, let's talk about the Longhorns' future opponents, not their upcoming opponents, Kentucky, but their future opponents. Last one on the schedule, the Texas A&M Aggies. And of course, it looks like there is a potential reckoning on the horizon between the two programs. The Longhorns, if they take care of business, versus the Kentucky Wildcats. They'll be 10-1 going into that matchup. If the Aggies take care of business as well, they'll only have, looks like, the way things are looking, if they can beat Auburn. And a lot of people are like, oh, man, that's not going to be a guaranteed win for the Aggies. I get it. The Aggies could easily, Aggie it up. All right, that is a thing. But I'm actually rooting for the Aggies, and I think the Aggies are going to win, and they'd go into that matchup 9-2. Looking for their 10th win of the season. If all goes the way it's supposed to. I believe Patrick pointed out the Aggies are only a 2-point favorite at Auburn. So
2.5,
Vegas thinks it's going to be a really tight matchup. So they can't afford to be distracted. But maybe they are. Because, like I said, that Texas A&M game right now, it projects to be as big as any Texas A&M game in the history of the rivalry. So Mike Elko's being asked about it. And even though they got Auburn this week, this Freudian slip is leading some people to believe that maybe the Aggies are distracted this week.
There's already so much talk about November 30th. It was announced as a night game today. How do you deal with that with your guys and saying, hey, we still have something ahead of us at Auburn, or is that even a big issue with your team?
I don't think it's an issue. I think when you're in the situation we're in, it's easy to focus on the task at hand. I think, those big games earlier in the year, maybe you look ahead. If we didn't have at stake what's at stake, maybe you would worry about it. I think our focus is single-handedly on on Auburn right now, and locked in on what we got to get done.
Ooh, got him. Oh, yeah. Don't worry, Coach. Everybody thinks you're distracted and thinking about Texas. It's okay. You just got to beat Auburn, even though we know you're a little bit, keyed in on Texas. I think Texas, same thing with Texas too. That is, I think, for Texas going to be the strategy, and that is also the conundrum for Sark. Because as you get closer and closer to that game, there's no doubt that players are talking about it. They know a lot of guys on that roster. Half these guys are probably took recruiting visits to the Aggies. Like me, they probably narrowed their choices down to the Longhorns and the Aggies. And the college football playoff, they pay attention to it. I'm sure of it. They pay attention to social media. And more discussion is if the Longhorns lose that game or the implications of that Texas A&M game. There's nothing really at stake for either for the opponents for either of these teams this weekend. Like the Auburn game for Auburn, there's nothing at stake there for them. And for Kentucky, I'm not sure what Kentucky's playing for other than pride. So, yeah, I think naturally for both teams this weekend, there probably could be a little bit of a distraction. Well, first of all, Texas, it's their senior night or farewell night. So naturally there'll be, a disruption, if you will, to their routine. But also thinking about the macro of this game on the horizon. And the coaches are doing extra prep for it. You always do extra prep for big games. I guess there is a concern for the Aggies and for the Longhorns that maybe this could be a trap game because of that, because of what's on the horizon. I don't think so. I think both teams win. Not sure how the Aggies, pull it out, or if they blow them out or anything like that. Because playing at Auburn, beating Auburn at home, that can be a pretty tall task, even though they're not a good team. I think you're going to get a all-time, at least in terms of the hype leading up, the promotion of the matchup. We know now it's going to be a primetime game. I think you may get the most most anticipated Texas A&M matchup in modern history. It's crazy to say that because, they just, first of all, they're both of them being good at the same time doesn't happen that often. And you don't really usually have, honestly, never have, because you've never had them in the SEC before. And I don't know how often in the Big 12 they met and there were title implications.
No, I think the last really meant something game was the last one because it was the last one.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't have one that stands on the top of my mind of like, oh man, what was riding on the line in that game for both teams?
Yeah.
Not for one team, because there's some where it's a lot riding on the line. Someone's trying to play spoiler, but this isn't playing spoiler. Like again,
even
we said,
now when Texas trying to go to the national title, that's a spoiler and a rivalry game. Yeah, that's big.
It's there, but it's not the same as if A&M beats Texas and wins the SEC championship, which they're in, if they win, then they're playing for a national championship. And so that's what I'm saying. And I mean, just the fact that they're playing for an SEC championship berth in the game makes it bigger than it's normally been. So
the Aggies hadn't played in a conference championship game since 1998 in total football.
Yeah,
1998 in the big. It was the year. I want to know. I know that because I was being recruited by the Aggies, and they were bragging about that. And when I signed in 1999, the Aggies were bragging about being conference champions. I believe it was the last time they played in a conference championship.
Yeah, and I don't know if there was a game.
Playing one in the Big 12.
I don't know if there was one where they could have been in it if they won.
Probably was. That probably something like that. Yeah, I probably missed that.
The implications of this being there'll be 2 top 15 teams, one top 5, one top 15, and in a expanded playoff world where that makes it different too, because normally this would have to be something where it would have been 2 top 5 teams. Now you're talking about a top 15 being in the playoff hunt. That makes it more expanded, so it makes it automatically bigger. It makes, we said at the start of the show, how many more big games are there in this week, where we're looking at the Army Notre Dame game, where that game wouldn't necessarily be a huge game because Army would be out of the picture completely, and Notre Dame at 6 would be pretty far out of it. It'd be hard for them to get into it.
Yeah.
But now you look at that game and go, oh no, it's huge implications.
Yeah. That's a monster right there, because they can knock Notre Dame out of this thing.
Yeah, and if Army's undefeated and beats Notre Dame, how do you keep them out?
Yeah.
Sounds downright un-American.
About them. Yeah. Oh yeah, President Trump has something to say about that. Think it's un-American? Yeah, I'm gonna change the playoff. He probably will. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's a lot of drama, but like I said, I don't remember ever this much drama surrounding the Texas A&M game. Like I said, you got to go back to 1975, the only year that Texas and Texas A&M both end up winning double-digit games by the end of the year. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe one team got their double-digit win. I think the Aggies may have got their double-digit win like either that game or in the bowl game, if I'm not mistaken, the way it all went down. But that was the last time that either program ended up getting double-digit win season in the same season. It could happen this year. The Aggies would have to get it at the win, obviously, win out, or then get their extra win in the bowl game or in the postseason somehow too. But still, you just don't get seasons where both Texas and Texas A&M are this good.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen. Like I said, historically, we never see it. That's why both fan bases are so paranoid that their success has to be at the expense of the other. Like if the Aggies are good, then Texas got to be bad. If Texas is good, then the Aggies got to be bad. It's going to be weird to watch both fan bases react to both teams being relatively good this season. Texas being really good, like top 3 good, but the Aggies also being the team that could end up competing for the SEC title. All right, we come back. We'll get into off the record. This off the record, we told this story earlier, but now there's an added layer, added chapter to the Tom Herman story. So this next story involves Tom Herman. It involves 50 Cent. Ray Lewis is thrown in there too. Oh, it's a bunch of stuff. It's just one of those great college football stories you just can't get enough of. And involves an old coach that recruited me, a former Aggie as well. Oh, this one's got everything you need. All that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Local and Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. We got to get to this story. So we told the story yesterday, or at least reported the story yesterday, that Tom Herman had been fired from his head coaching job at FAU with the Florida Atlantic Owls. The stat was a great stat that there are 4 FBS teams that have the owl as their mascot. All 4 of them had fired their head coaches. All 4 of them. And 2 of them were former Texas coaches, Stan Drayton and Tom Herman. Freaky, crazy stuff, right? Freaky Friday kind of crazy stuff. Well, after Tom Herman was fired, a lot of the rumors and conjecture about what happened behind the scenes and why Tom Herman was let go started to be revealed and started to be reported. And one of the rumors were that he wanted to fire, and he did actually fire, Rock Bellantoni. He was his defensive coordinator. But some of the whispers were that he wanted to fire him because he himself was on the hot seat, which makes sense because he was 6-16 in his 2 years there, 2-8 this season. So he was paranoid about his job, and that the scuttlebutt was, oh, they're going to fire you, Tom, and they're going to put in Rock as the interim head coach because everybody loves Rock. Everybody loves Rock. Administration loves him. Players love him. Fans love him. He's going to be the guy, and it just makes this an easy transition to fire you. And so this is just rumor right now. This is just rumor. Nobody reported officially, was that Tom Herman, in order to stave off this coup and having him being usurped, if you will, by Rock Bellantoni, they just fired him. Now I'm just going to fire you. And now I may get some more time. I have no idea. Or maybe he and Tom Herman got into it behind the scenes. So they fired Rock Bellantoni, at least Tom Herman did. And then a couple of weeks later, Tom Herman himself ended up being fired, as we reported. The administration, which is why they have kind of given some life to some of those rumors that I was just talking about earlier. After Tom Herman was fired, the interim head coach, which is, I think his name is Chad Lunsford, he hired him back again. He hired Rock Bellantoni. He hired him back as the DC, which I've never heard of before. The guy who was fired by the previous head coach earlier that season was rehired by the interim coach to finish the season. And on his X account, Bellantoni posted a 50 Cent video, like a video of 50 Cent, is the video Mini Men, with the caption, "I'm back." With some people believing this was to troll Tom Herman somehow. Crazy stuff. But it gets even crazier. So now there's a report that I just saw. I'm sure you've seen this too, Patrick. This is a report. I saw it. Adam Schefter. So that's as credible as it gets. Adam Schefter is reporting that after FAU, basically when they start their coaching search, all right, to find out who's going to replace Tom Herman, that one of the candidates is going to be linebacker, for Hall of Fame linebacker, former Ravens linebacker, Ray Lewis, has emerged as a candidate to become the next coach at Florida Atlantic University.
Man, that is not a guy you talk bad about if he takes your job. If he takes your job, you shake his hand, wish him the best, and run as fast as you can.
They said they're following the Deion Sanders model, and that they're hoping, I guess, to get a lot of the benefits that Colorado has gotten with Deion. And keep in mind, Deion started, I said this earlier, Deion started coaching in high school, at the high school level. We all remember a little academy that he started here in Texas.
Yeah.
And then went to the HBCU there at Jackson State, and then went to the Power Four. So it ain't like Deion just started coaching all of a sudden. They just threw him into, the college coaching level. He had some skins on the wall and actually had learned how to be a head coach at a lower level first. Ray Lewis coached anything? I don't know if he's ever coached anything. So I think this is just, like I said, Adam Schefter did report it, but I don't know if there's any real substance to this. That's crazy.
Let me ask you a question, Rod. If you're in an alley, you're in a dark alley, and down one side of the alley is Mike Tyson, and down the other side is Ray Lewis. Which way do you run?
Man, that's tough. That is a tough question. I'm definitely not going toward Mike. I'm gonna take my chances with Ray.
You're gonna go Ray.
But
hey, NFL alum, right? Hey, we're good.
yeah, but also don't forget, hey man, Ray. Just saying.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Ray's
He's wearing
the white suit.
Right, he's wearing a white suit.
I'm just saying the white suit, man. So Ray, hey, you say what you want about Mike, but
hey, one of them was
Mike
in
was
prison.
never accused of what Ray was accused of at one time.
But Mike was
allegedly,
in prison.
Allegedly.
Mike did do prison time.
Mike did prison time.
Man,
and Mike once said that I didn't rape that woman, so I shouldn't have gone to jail for that, but I should be in jail because I've done much worse. Yeah. I believe this.
So we'll ask us. We can ask Nick Shuley about who he would take. I don't know who I would take either. Ooh. I think I'm standing right in the middle, and I'm hoping to pull a Three Stooges and step out of the way at the right time. I think that's
yeah. At least how wide is his alley? Can I get around any of them? Can I juke somebody? Because I can't juke Ray. Chance of me juking Ray at Hall of Fame linebacker probably.
You know what? I'm going Mike, and I'm stepping on a foot. Stepping on a foot.
That's what I'm saying. Yes, because Mike was
run.
Because Mike was slow in the ring. I ain't gonna lie, he was a little slow getting around the ring. Remember, his feet stopped and he was just sitting there like a punching bag. I might be able to get around Mike. I don't think I can get around Ray. Yeah. I guess I'm leaning toward. Ooh.
It's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Going toward Mike. That is a tough one, man. That's getting stabbed or getting shot. Which one are you gonna choose? All right. Speaking of getting stabbed, I shouldn't even brought that up because that was sorry, Ray. That's not. I didn't try to go that route. All right, we come back. Allegedly, yes, allegedly. We come back. We got Nick Shuley with Setlist ATX. He's gonna hook us up and let you know where some of the very talented musicians coming into town, where they're gonna be performing, and we'll also dive back into the Cowboys conversation. Will Dion be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? So we're talking about rumor and conjecture. We'll get into that one. We'll also dive into the latest firing at the NFL level. Joe Douglas, the GM of the Jets, he is out. We'll talk about that, and I got a Texan stat that I want to share with you. Maybe my favorite defensive stat. If I could choose a stat defensively other than scoring defense, obviously, for you to be elite in or be one of the league leaders in, it might be this stat. And I'll share that with you when we come back because the Texans right now are leading the league in this statistical category. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a One Artist Wednesday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host, Patrick Davis, the Idealionaire on the show, who comes up with all the musically themed days of the week, he goes deep down the rabbit hole into the catalog of one specific artist, group, or band. And today, the featured artist, group, or band for One Artist Wednesday, Joe Walsh. Celebrating 77 years. So that is the reason that he is the featured artist for One Artist Wednesday. So we appreciate my man Patrick hooking us up there. He also hooks us up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll of the day. How many rushing yards will Texas have against Kentucky? Right now, 100 to 130 is winning at 53% of the vote, 130 to 160 with 30%. 160 plus at 11% and 6% for 0 to 100.
All right, there you go. 0 to 100. Yeah, I feel like, against this team they should get over 100. Definitely. I mean, that's easy.
I mean, what they've only gotten under 100 one time this season, and that was Georgia.
Yeah,
and that was the worst performance we've seen of this team all year by a long, long margin. I mean, every other game, they've at least made it to 100. Even that Vandy game, they didn't play well. They made it to 104.
Made to 104 there. Yeah, and Jaden Blue's been
they were
starting to break him. He's been starting to break him lately. Like he had one or two that he pops a game. Yeah. That gives you, for him, usually that's all he needs. You give him about 10 touches, and usually I think he's been like at 15, 17 touches. He's going to break 2 of those, which is basically what he's been doing the last couple of games. So I'm going to go 100 to – I'm gonna go 130 to 160. I'll go 130 to 160.
Oh no, I'm going 160 plus. I think Texas gets the lead. Really? I think Texas gets the lead. They run the ball for the entire fourth quarter and just puts up the numbers. So I think you break 1 or 2 early in the game. So you get those stats earlier, and then you just run the ball, just push the numbers up.
I don't know what Sark. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know when he's gonna figure out what's working in the run game, because the trend has been it takes him about a quarter, maybe a half to figure it out. Once he figures it out, boom, they pop a few. So if he figures it out sooner, they'll pop a few sooner. And I'm with you. You could get some big rushing numbers on the board early, or at least pop a couple of those early. We know he's going to lead with the pass. How quickly can you get a lead with the pass?
Yep.
And then to go back to establishing the run, and that's Sark's recipe, right? Open up the pass, close with the run. And so, how quickly can you get there? That'll depend on how well this Kentucky defense plays. The only thing that worries me about facing the Kentucky defense, they do have NFL players at every level of their defense, and they come to play against ranked opponents.
They do.
They're not a good football team at all. So I'm not gonna lie to you and be like, oh man, Kentucky, that's a good football team. Nope, they're not good. But you go look at their best games, all their best games have come against their best teams they played. Except for like South Carolina. I think they got mollywopped by them. But then they played Georgia, and they lost to Georgia 13-12.
Yep.
Then they played Ole Miss, lost to Ole Miss by 3, 2017.
They beat Ole Miss. They beat Ole Miss.
They beat Ole Miss. Yes, they beat Ole Miss 2013. Then they lost to Tennessee 28-18. That was a little bit of a 10-point win. So 10-point loss, I should say. So that one's a little bit more of a decisive win by Tennessee, but still they played them close. And then Vanderbilt is considered by some, even though they're not ranked, and they weren't ranked in, to be a good team, a competitive team. Texas learned that. That's a key quality win for Texas. And they lost to them by 1 touchdown, 20-13. So they play good teams really close, including, like you said, that big upset win over Ole Miss, which I still don't know how the hell Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. Yeah, sometimes y'all looking at these losses, and they got to start penalizing people more for losing to teams that you had no business losing to. No business at all. You got to find a way to pull out that game against I know, same thing with Georgia, right? They found a way to win that game against Kentucky. That would have been an inexplicable, almost unexplainable loss. Can't have those on your resume if you want to be playing in the college football playoff. You know what I mean? So I think for a lot of teams like that, that's going to come back to haunt them. But right now, Ole Miss is playing some of the best football of any SEC team. Right now, that's clear too. All right, we'll talk more about Texas versus Kentucky. On the other side, we'll get into some Texas Kentucky discussion, some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll hear from Dion. We're also gonna hear from Mike McCarthy as well. Talk some Cowboys. But before we do any of that, we're gonna hear from my man Nick Shuley for Setlist ATX. But first, let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with my man Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Mavericks blew out the Pelicans 132-91 last night. 8 Mavericks finished with double-digit points as Dallas shot over 50% from the field for the game. The Spurs picked up a 110-104 win over the Thunder with the Spurs top three scorers out for the game. Keldon Johnson went off in the second quarter and ended up with 22 points to lead the way for the Spurs. Both teams are now 1-1 in NBA Cup play. Tonight, the Rockets take on the Pacers in Houston. Texas women's basketball will host their annual 40 Acres field trip day today with upwards of 5,000 kids in attendance from local schools as the Longhorns take on Tarleton State. That game takes place at 11 a.m. at the Moody Center. In college football, latest college football playoff rankings were released with no change to the top 5, leaving Texas at number 3. After BYU's loss, Boise State has now claimed the last bye as the higher-ranked conference champion. Tennessee, SMU, Colorado, and Clemson are your first 4 out of the playoffs as it stands today. And in the NFL, the Jets have fired general manager Joe Douglas after 5+ seasons. The move comes 6 weeks after the Jets fired coach Robert Saleh and have gone 1-5 in that span. Phil Savage is now the interim GM, and that's your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Appreciate those, and we'll get back to some of those headlines because I want to talk some NFL and some college before the show is done today. But on Wednesdays, we're always pleased to be joined by Nick Shuley, who joins us to talk about Setlist ATX. We appreciate his time because he's a busy man. What's going on, Nick? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. What's happening with y'all?
Oh, man, nothing much, brother. Nothing much. Getting excited talking about these college football playoff rankings. What are your thoughts about where the Longhorns are ranked in the college football playoff rankings and the possibility people are talking about now, if the Longhorns do lose another game, they may get kicked out entirely of the college football playoff rankings.
Yeah, sadly, I do think if we lose, especially with the lack of respect we've been shown out there, I think if we lose one of these last 2, I think we're done. Sadly, wow. I don't think we can get back in it. But I do think there's some all the talk in the media is pretty hilarious. It went from, Texas is this great team to you play a few close games in the SEC and now we're garbage. We have no good wins. Our offense is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And it's just the way that shifted. And I saw that Kyle Umlong post on Twitter about, let's stop talking about the quality wins and let's start talking about your worst loss. And I think that's very true because Notre Dame has no business being in this conversation, but that's just me.
No, I'm with you. I just gotten into it talking about, that loss Ole Miss had. I mean, to Kentucky. It's like, how the hell did you lose to this Kentucky team?
Yeah, exactly. And imagine Texas lost to Louisiana Monroe and beat everybody else. Like, I think you'd have a fair argument of like, hey, that's a problem.
Yeah. No, the committee obviously doesn't. They don't have a lot of weight on the losses as much as they do on the wins.
Yeah,
and even honestly, I'm with you. I think they actually have yet to show how much they value the quality wins as a data point too, because that's why the strength of schedule argument keeps coming up with teams like Indiana because they haven't beaten anybody, even with Texas because Texas technically hasn't had a quality win. I know Vandy's considered that. Now they saying Arkansas is a quality win for them. Like, that's a bit of a stretch. And
that's a tough look for Texas, man, when you see the Vanderbilt and Arkansas as our quality wins.
yeah, that's a bit of a stretch. I get that. All right, before we start Setlist ATX, what are your thoughts about Joe Walsh? You're a Joe Walsh fan?
Absolutely. Love Joe Walsh. So I was raised by a huge Eagles fan. My dad loved the Eagles so much, but Joe Walsh was always his favorite because Joe Walsh is an absolute kind of nut in a good way. Like, he's just so out there, but he's also like, the guy is an absolutely incredible human. He saved the lives of so many musicians because he was a big time, addict and, alcohol, etc. And he's dedicated a lot of his life. He's the guy who helps a lot of these. I think he helped Jason Isbell and some of these other guys get sober. And so he's been a big part of that, but he's also just a super creative songwriter that's always loved Austin. He's always been kind of Austin's always been kind of a adopted spot for him.
I always love one of my favorite Joe Walsh stories was he was pulling up to a studio, and what they had to do to get him from the car to the studio is they put tape on the ground for where he was supposed to walk because he wasn't going to lift his head up. Have you ever seen Joe Walsh? He walks with his head down a lot, and so they just put tape so he could walk in with his sunglasses on and head down and not have to look up. so he could just kind of shuffle in, and they just put tape on the ground for him to follow.
Rock stars, they're
That's
just like
eccentric.
us. Everyone, they're just like us.
That is eccentric. That is
For real.
that is crazy. There you go. All right, so there you go. Joe Walsh is our featured artist for One Artist Wednesday. All right, so Nick, let's get right to it. Set list ATX. We usually start off on a hump day. How about this week? What are we looking at?
Yeah, interesting one tonight. Not a music show, but an evening with Josh Brolin at the Paramount. And Josh Brolin, you might remember from True Grit, Avengers Endgame, No Country for Old Men, and most importantly, the oldest brother on Goonies. So they're doing a night.
Oh wow, I didn't even think about that. I forget all about that. That was him.
That was him as a baby. But yeah, so I think it's a night of like him kind of talking through his career and things like that. And the Paramount does such a good job of things like this that are almost like interviews or kind of podcast type formats. So it'd be a cool one to see. That guy has been through some stuff and seen some stuff, I'm sure, over the years.
Nice, that's pretty cool. Is he a Texan or something?
I don't think so. I think he's probably just doing a tour or something, or maybe I mean a lot of times the Paramount will put these together and just reach out to people and say, hey, would you be willing to talk about your career, things like that. So
nice.
They're great about that. And then tomorrow, High School Nick is extremely excited because his favorite band from freshman year of high school, Everclear, will be out at the Hot Spot in Cedar Park. I was obsessed with that band in high school, and they're a good little alternative rock band. But they definitely they're kind of deemed as a one-hit wonder, but they actually had a ton of radio hits back in the day growing up.
So you're saying they're not a one-hit wonder? They got more substance than that, more staying power than that.
I don't know about substance, but they got more hits than that. Yeah. So yeah, they were just a good radio rock band. They're one of those bands that 5 of their songs, even though you don't know who they are. Like you'll hear a song and be like, oh, I didn't know that was them. That's kind of them.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And then a really cool lo-fi indie rockers, Interpol, will be over at the Moody Amphitheater. And then a big country show with Little Big Town and Sugarland will be over at the Moody Center. And then another one that High School Nick really loved, The Locks, will be over at Stubbs, and The Locks are Jadakiss, Styles P, and Chic Luke.
I didn't even know they were still touring together. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, their biggest hit was probably Money, Power, and Respect, I think. But they were also on. I guess this you can't talk about this now. They were on It's All About the Benjamins with old Diddy. So.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can say that on the radio anymore. Can you say that name?
People don't talk about that anymore. Man. You can't mention Diddy.
No, you can't do that. And then a big dubstep producer will be over at Emo's Sudden Death. And then Friday, one of Chicago's biggest hip hop artists, Polo G, will be headlining Stubbs. And then another big show of Mexican banda music will be at Moody Center with Banda MS they're from Mazatlan, Sinaloa, which I've learned a lot about in the all the cartel movies, but I'm guessing that's what MS is Mazatlan, Sinaloa, but who knows? Anyway, yeah. And then Austin's kind of one of their biggest indie chart toppers, Dayglow, who's really risen to success. He was a UT kid. He is playing Parrish, and as well as a few other shows because I think he's got a new album coming out. And then country rocker Sam Barber will be over at Emo's. One of my personal favorite local indie bands, Swimming with Bears, will be at Far Out Lounge. And then this legendary kind of rock steady dub group, the Slackers. A lot of people give them credit for helping kind of start ska and some other types of genres. They're doing a 3-night stand at Flamingo Cantina, and so that'll be the first night. And Flamingo Cantina is a great spot that it used to host all the reggae, dub, a lot of the stuff growing up. And so if you listen to that was kind of where you went, and it's kind of an old Austin haunt that I love, and it's got one of those interesting layouts, but it's just a cool spot.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. Flamingo Cantina is unlike any other club you go to in this town, and it's been that way forever.
There's like some bleachers on
Flamingo
one part.
Cantina?
There's like
where is it?
It's on Dirty 6.
Okay, I don't think I know exactly where it is.
Yeah, and so you'd walk right past it, and if you walk in, you'd be like, oh, I don't know if I've ever been to a place like this, and then you may pick up a smell or two there.
Yeah, no, you 100% will. And then over down in New Braunfels at Green Hall, legendary country artist Ray Wiley Hubbard will be playing. And then on Saturday, the aforementioned Dayglow will be doing his headlining show at Stubbs, which is a big one. The other one's kind of an underplay. And then singer-songwriter Joshua Radin will be over at the 04 Center. Ruthie Foster, who's an absolute Austin legend, she'll be at the Paramount. And then night 2 of the Slackers, as I mentioned. And then Gary P. Nunn, who's famous for writing the theme song for Austin City Limits, the Home with the Armadillo song. He will be at Green Hall. And then Sunday, the rescheduled Cigarettes After Sex show. They're kind of a lo-fi indie band. They'll be at Moody Center. And an indie pop group, Girl in Red, at ACL Live. Night 3 of the Slackers at Flamingo Cantina. And then blues, kind of country rock artist John Hyatt will be at the Paramount. And then Mondays, Austin pop artist Sydney Wright will be over at Geraldine's in the Van Zant Hotel, which is a cool little spot if you haven't been there. And then Tuesday, Jersey indie rockers The Front Bottoms will be at Stubbs, and Austin music legacy and songwriter William Harris Graham will be over at the Hole in the Wall over on campus.
Nice.
Yeah,
I appreciate that, Nick. Good stuff there. Also, I want to remind the folks out there listening that Nick also hooks us up because he works really hard for our Third and Longhorns podcast, which we do weekly. It's me and Alex Okafor and Jeremy Hills and Fozzie Whitaker and Nick Shuley, Derek Johnson, of course. I didn't even mention the most accomplished one of the group.
Headliner.
Exactly. The guy who's in like multiple halls of fame. But yes, we do a podcast together. It's really fun. Do it weekly. We can't all be there all the time, but we do get most of the guys there. And they do a post game as well. So Nick, let the folks know where they can catch the Third and Longhorns weekly podcast, but also the post game that we're doing as well.
Yeah, you can just go to thirdandlonghorn.com, which is 3RD and Longhorn or spell it out, and we'll kind of redirect you over there. But you can watch it on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, etc.
Appreciate that, Nick, and appreciate all your hard work too. What are your plans for the weekend, man? You got some big plans, or just watching football?
Just watching football, man. I was gonna try to sneak to the game, but if I do go to the game, I have to kind of dip out at the end of the first half so I can get back to the studio to do the post game.
Right,
so it kind of makes it tough, and I feel bad eating the tickets up. So I generally, my brother and brother-in-law tend to benefit from my from the post game show.
Nice.
So, but yeah, man, just watching a lot of football. Hopefully, how about you guys?
No, man. Same thing. It's gonna be some really interesting games, I think, over the weekends. Of course, that Indiana Ohio State game. I think a lot of people are gonna be interested in that one too.
Yeah, I'm excited. And a lot of people just don't know this, but Diamante Tucker Dorsey, who played for Texas, his little brother is a defensive lineman on Indiana. So he
that's right, because he did come from James Madison.
Yeah, Signetti. I talked to Tuck about Signetti, and he's like he's the real deal. And then he was like, just Google him.
Yeah, no, he's brash, no doubt about it, man. He knows how good he is. Yeah. He's been bragging about it too.
Nick, let's see if you can answer this question too. If you were stuck in an alley, we were trying to figure this out. If you're stuck in an alley and at one side of it is Mike Tyson and the other is Ray Lewis. Which side do you run towards?
I don't. Well, technically, was Ray Lewis ever convicted?
No.
Okay, so I feel like you go to his side because one touch from Mike Tyson's punch, and I feel like that'd be the end of it
done,
all.
Son.
Yeah, you would be done.
That's a good point. You go to what you know, and you know Mike Tyson. His hands are weapons or lethal weapons. You know that.
Yeah.
We don't know that Ray Lewis did something that sick and demented. We don't know.
Yeah,
that was a legend, and the white suit went missing. We don't know what happened to that white suit. We never found it.
That whole story, man. Yeah, I guess you have to go to Ray Lewis because, man, I can't imagine what it's like to take a punch from that guy. I don't want to imagine.
I don't. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm still scared. Even though after I saw him at 58 in the ring, I would still be afraid to get into the ring with Mike Tyson.
Man, I wish we could have had a real fight and watched him actually fight Jake Paul because I think that thing would have been over quickly, even at 58. But
I know. Did you watch the spectacle?
I saw some of the highlights, man. I've seen a lot of the breakdowns. It wasn't
worth watching.
Yeah,
that's the undercard fights were good. Actually.
I did hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, the undercard. I was actually entertained watching the undercard, but the actual main event, no. It's what we thought it was. For a 58-year-old man fighting a 20? How old is Jake Paul?
27,
something
man,
like that.
Why doesn't he just schedule
a
real fighter, schedule a real boxer so people can see? But he doesn't want to do it because it keeps the hype going.
No, because now I know that he was getting proud because somebody who was a champion hit him up and was like, "Let's schedule the fight," and he was like, I've only been in this for a few years, and I run the game. I run all of boxing now, and all. You're like, well, then accept the fight. You can't say you run it off if you duck the fight. Though.
You want to be the best, fight the best.
Yeah, the reason it's a good point. The reason he's saying he's running it because now the way that he has set himself up with his social media following, and now this latest fight, which he got 40 million for, by the way.
Yeah,
he's the payday guy now.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like because Mike got 20 million. That's why they were asking Mike, if you're gonna fight again. Mike was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll fight his brother. He literally challenged his brother. He's like, I'll fight you because I want that another 20 million. This is the easiest payday I ever had. People expect me to lose. I lose, and they give me 20 million. Yes, I'll take it.
Dude, it's great. It's great marketing. It's just like the Cowboys. Say what you want about Jerry Jones. They might not win, but you're talking about him every second. And same with this. He's everywhere.
Yep, he's like Jake Paul knows how to put on a show now, and that's why the fighters are now coming to him and challenging him and saying, "Hey, I want to fight you because I want that 20 million."
I want someone to do that and then and basically flip the script in the middle of it and just torch him. That's what I want to see. Just open it up.
We're all waiting on that, man. Trust me. Everybody wants to see Jake Paul get knocked the blank out, but that's part of the appeal. That's why we keep coming back.
We're talking about it.
Coming back. Exactly. We're talking about it. All right, Nick. Thank you, brother, for all your time. I know you don't have a lot of it. We appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
That's Nick Shuley. You can cyberstalk him via social media if you'd like to. Just look up Nick Shuley. Does a great job for the Third and Longhorns podcast, but also when he hooks us up with the Set List ATX. All right, we come back. We got a lot to get into. Smorgasbord. We'll talk Joe Douglas getting fired from the Jets. We got sound from Deion Sanders and from Michael Irvin in regards to Deion Sanders' future. Could it be with the Dallas Cowboys? Michael Irvin thinks there is a path to Deion Sanders being the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. We'll talk about that. We'll also get into a little bit more of Rod's rant and get into the Texans. They are the league leader in this stat, and it might be my second favorite defensive stat to keep up with. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Tom Longhorn and Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into Rod's Rant of the Day. Bit of a smorgasbord, if you will, of topics that I want to get into here. First, I want to talk about the Cowboys. A lot of different Cowboys-related stories. That's the way Jerry Jones likes it. The first one is about Deion. We brought it up yesterday just because the scuttlebutt, the word on the street is, that Deion may be one of the candidates when Mike McCarthy, or if Mike McCarthy is fired. Matter of fact, let's talk about that first. There's some people that believe that Jerry Jones might decide to keep Mike McCarthy. This is now a new subject being discussed. I don't think I don't think that it's possible, but I will admit the case somebody made for it makes a lot of sense, because essentially the reason Jason Garrett stayed around so long, 10 seasons, even though he had won 2 playoff games in 10 seasons. Jerry wants somebody that he's comfortable with, somebody that will comply and will do so without resistance or opposition. And Mike McCarthy is very much that. And that anybody else you bring in, you got to risk tension, opposition, and them wanting to resistance into your chain of command, the way you like to do things. And Jerry may not be down for that, at least right now, until he finds the perfect candidate, as I talked about yesterday, the perfect candidate that's compatible with Jerry's ownership style, which is unique, and that can also be the right coach for Dak. And that if Jerry can't really find that person, that maybe he might keep Mike McCarthy. And I don't think he should, but I will admit I am a bit stupefied as to who's going to replace Mike McCarthy. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know either, but and I agree with you. Everything you're saying is true. It's the Jerry Jones dilemma that we always come across, where you go, well, what's the worst possible decision you could make? And then, well, clearly they wouldn't. And you go, oh, it's Jerry. No, he'd make the worst possible decision. There's a good chance he lets Rico Dowdle go and re-sign Zeke to a 10-year deal. Like, that's a real possible thing that could happen next year. No, he was down this year, but he was kind of hurt and going through some things. He'll be better next year. Yeah. Could happen.
Because they're not a serious football team.
Yeah. And so, it is believable that he doesn't want to get rid of Mike McCarthy, because he's waiting for someone to call him and say, I want to be the head coach of the Cowboys and do whatever you say. And he doesn't want to go through and have to grovel at Bill Belichick or Deion or any of these other guys that are hot commodities. He doesn't want to have to kiss their butt to get him.
I will let you do this and that. Yeah.
He doesn't want to do that. He wants people to come to him. And Mike McCarthy will always come back and walk up and go, no, do whatever you want. No, I trust you. I'll go try and win with the best he got.
Yeah. No, like I said, when somebody said it, I was like, no way. And they were like, it's Jerry Jones, man. They're like, why do you think Jason Garrett stayed around so long? Because first of all, Jerry Jones has a hard time getting the best coaches to come work for him, because they're like, no, I got options, and you are not one of them. Because I actually want to win football games, and I want some control. I want some personnel control and some say on personnel and things of that nature. And Jerry Jones, notoriously, he meddles too much and micromanages his coaches a lot. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. But somebody said, don't be surprised if he decides to just go with Mike McCarthy for one more year. Just sign him a 1-year deal. And that'd be horrible. I
mean, if you talk about losing a locker room.
Look at the stands. That's why he won't do it. You saw those stands in the last game.
That's true. That may be why he doesn't do it.
That's why he won't do it. Them stands are bad. And you've been having so many embarrassing home losses. Your last 6 games, you've been down by at least 20 points. Last 6 home games, been down by at least 20 points. You're on pace to have to be one of the worst home seasons in the history of the Dallas Cowboys organization.
Well, I mean, so far they've said in all 4 major American sports, every home team has won a game. Except for the Cowboys. In 2024. You're the only team that has not won a home game in 2024.
That's an awful stat.
But I get, because you get in baseball and basketball and hockey, there's enough games you're going to do it. So all of those will hit those, right? But in football, every team in the NFL season has won a home game.
Damn. Except the Cowboys, who, by the way, are allowing right now currently the most points per game at home in NFL history. They currently have the record. If it stands, if the season ends today, they would have allowed the most points per game at home in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
It's bad.
And just for looking at that, you have 4 more home games left. So 4 more chances to get a win.
Yeah, but no Dak. Cooper Rush is your guy.
Cooper Rush, you play the Commanders.
Loss.
Buccaneers.
Loss.
Bengals.
Loss.
Giants. Giants are in a couple weeks.
Ooh,
Giants
that's they won
on Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
on Thanksgiving, you get to play the Giants.
Tommy DeVito,
Cooper Rush coming at you Thanksgiving Day. The joke going around the internet right now is, man, I can already feel the nap I'm going to take during that football game.
I'm going to wake up right in time for the fourth quarter. Like, what's going on? Who's winning? Oh, man. Yep, that's it. So the Commanders on a losing streak, though, for the first time all season. They lost 2 in a row.
But I mean.
Oh, no. My that makes them more than that means you going to lose.
Yeah.
I feel better about it if you'd have been able to catch about. No, you going to lose.
Because they play the Commanders this week. And then they play the Commanders at home to end the season. I went backwards, by the way, because I had. I had to finish with the Giants because that's your most likely win right there.
Yes.
For the sake of radio, I had to go the other way. But
but no, you're right. Because this week different. But they're gonna lose this week though to the Commanders. My thing was they're not gonna beat the Commanders either time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna lose to the Commanders both times, and. Honestly, the Cowboys are becoming a bit of a slump buster for teams because they were that for the Texans. Texans had lost 3 of their last 4, remember, going into that game, and slump buster. Remember the 49ers were struggling. The 49ers had lost like 4 of their previous 6. They had lost 4 of their previous 6 before heading into that game against the Cowboys, slump buster. And then Washington's lost their last 2. That's what you are now, Cowboys. You're a slump buster. Everybody remembers those. That's not flattering. No, you don't want to be that.
And that's why you got to move on from Mike McCarthy. That's why you have to move on. And I wonder though, if they lose that Thanksgiving game, if that changes things, because you lose now on Thanksgiving to a Tommy DeVito led Giants at home. Now your home win, you may not win a home game this season.
It's gonna be like draft position at stake, isn't there?
I'm draft position at stake, but if you're Jerry Jones and you're at home on Thanksgiving, and Mike McCarthy can't pull out a win against the Giants, is that the one where you just go, all right, screw it. This has gone too far I get not being good, but wow, you are just falling down a cliff because I still have $1 million players out on this field. Yes, there's an injury to the quarterback, and I get that's a problem, but their starting quarterback's not there. And their starting quarterback sucked, and he's not there.
Yeah, he got benched because he was inept. No, I'm with you. That could be a fire, like right after the game kind of firing. If he doesn't get fired before that, like I said, I'm with you. I don't think they should keep Mike McCarthy around. The apathy now starting to spread with the fan base is something Jerry Jones will not stand for. He can deal with, embarrassing moments on the field, but the fans losing hope in the fan base, I think that'll hit Jerry Jones differently. But Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams, Cardi B, making the same size. But if he can bring in a coach after Mike McCarthy that can reinvigorate the fan base and start to build that foundation of hope again, that would go a long way with Jerry getting back some of the fan support. There are some that believe that the right guy, or at least that Jerry Jones thinks the right guy, might be Deion Sanders. But there's a stipulation. So Michael Irvin went on The Herd, and he claims that if this happens, if this one thing happens and takes place, that Deion will indeed be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
News today, you do believe, and I do too, that if Shador went to the Cowboys, Deion would accept the job.
I believe 100%. And I can tell you, good sources have told me that. Great sources have told me that. That's all I can say like that without violating anything else.
The play, man. You know I love having you.
Yeah, I'm not sure who the sources are. Could be somebody in the Jones family because he's as close to the Cowboys organization, I imagine, as anybody. As you mentioned, could be Deion.
Could be Deion.
He's close to Deion, too.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But, yeah, it's Michael Irvin, so he does have those connections. I can't see the Cowboys drafting Shedeur after paying Dak all that money.
No, because I get the dead cap stuff in the NFL is really the reason. I know people are like, you can't move on from Dak for the next couple of years. You just can't.
No,
like you're paying him one way or the other, so you kind of got him for the next few years. I do think that there is another player though that he thinks of as a son that is a possibility that could work. That Jerry Jones could say, I want to bring in the best two-way player in college football and put him alongside CeeDee Lamb in this offense, and we'll get the high-powered offense going, and we'll bring in Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
And then if you bring in Dion and things start working well, and now Dak's 34, and maybe you're ready to move on from Dak, and then you bring in Shedeur from the other team wherever he went. Now you go bring Shedeur in.
The Travis Hunter thing is very realistic, actually.
That's what I'm saying is if they tank out and don't play very well, you go in the market for Travis Hunter. That becomes more realistic to me than Shedeur, because what you have to do for Shedeur is basically trade Dak, take on a massive dead cap hit for the next 4 years, I believe. You be paying, $60-70 million in dead cap every year, and not being able to put a team around Shedeur. And so it becomes difficult. It becomes difficult to re-sign Micah at that point and field a roster. And so it just becomes more and more difficult to bring him in, because you're also not paying Shedeur nothing. You're paying him a rookie scale, but you're paying also a starting quarterback, and you're paying a top 5 pick quarterback in Shedeur as well.
Yeah, and the whole point of getting a rookie quarterback, a franchise quarterback on the rookie deal, is so that you do have the salary cap relief, and you can take the rest of the majority of that salary cap because you got the quarterback at a discounted rate to build the team. You would lose that discount or lose that financial advantage because of the dead cap you're talking about. So it's not even worth doing anyway. So I think it's highly unrealistic that happens, but I love your idea about Travis Hunter. That makes sense for the Cowboys. So they could use him too. They really could use a Travis Hunter on offense or on defense or both. Jerry Jones' history. Jerry's
Jerry's one of the few owners that would say put him on both sides.
Yep,
I want the attraction.
Yep, I want the headlines. Whether it's good for him or bad for him, Jerry Jones is like, nope, I want the headlines.
So I could see that one makes a lot more sense to me.
I actually like that idea. That would support that draft pick for the Dallas Cowboys too, if that is indeed the case. And Dion's on the record. In fact, we'll hear from Dion here in a sec, because Dion was asked about, whether he's going to stay in Colorado or not. He seemed a bit offended by the question because it was in front of his boss. So nobody likes to be asked a question about whether they're leaving the company that they work for in front of their boss. But Dion has said that he will work behind the scenes to influence where Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are drafted and where they end up playing. He's on the record for already saying that. But let's hear from Dion, because there's no guarantee Dion's going to leave Colorado. I would advise Dion to leave Colorado. When Shedeur and Travis Hunter leave, I would advise him to leave, or at least cash that lottery ticket when they leave, because your fortunes could be very different at a place like Colorado.
Don't play a Matt Campbell.
Yes, thank you. Great boy. Matt Campbell could have had. Oh man, people had him for that Notre Dame job. They had him for the Detroit Lions job at one point. He was a front runner for. He decided to stay at Iowa State, and he's not doing bad. He's doing pretty good there, but his name is no longer considered one of those hot names in coaching. It didn't come up every time there's a coaching vacancy like Dion's is coming up right now. So here's Dion when he was asked about, whether, because everybody assumes he's leaving Colorado sooner rather than later. Here's what Dion had to say about that possibility.
You're mentioned for everything that comes up these days, college, pro, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that just the price of
talk
winning?
like that with my AD in here? That's so disrespectful. You gonna talk about me going somewhere with my AD in here? Yeah, they mentioned us with a lot of other stuff before we start winning too, didn't they? Did that? That wasn't fair, was it? Price. That's the price of everything. Hold on one second. I'm happy where I am, man. I'm good. I got a kickstand down. You know what a kickstand is? A lot of people don't in there and not of age don't know what a kickstand is. That means I'm resting. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic about where I am. I love it here. I truly do. Next question.
All right. Yeah. Kickstand down. But like I said, I'm not paying attention necessarily to what he said. His boss is in there, so I get that. But I do think it may be tougher to pull Dion out of Colorado unless I think he wants to go to the right situation, especially in college, because I think he knows he'll be a hotter name in college than he will be in the NFL. But an NFL job, I think it would have to be like the kind of a situation where he couldn't pass it up. Like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I guess being able to be the head coach of your son's franchise in the NFL, that would, if he can do that, if he can finagle that, that would be a once in a lifetime opportunity. I don't think he could pass that up.
No. First of all, I like the kickstand analogy because it is very much like, you know how easy it is to kick up a kickstand and you're already on two wheels and you just go,
and then
like,
you're going. Yeah.
like, yeah, that is not the most set way to be. I'm just like, you didn't say I put my stakes in the ground or I'm rooted here. I've got something in the ground. No, you're like, nah, I'm slightly leaning to stay here.
I'm leaning.
That is what a kickstand is. Slightly leaning.
Slightly. There you go.
Slightly leaning.
Exactly right.
No, but
he wants you to get the visual. He wants the visual. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is, and that was the one job that was the interesting one where we saw Dan Lanning's name start to pop up in NFL circles when the rumors started to come that his name is popular in NFL circles. No, there's no reports that he is interested in the NFL. There's reports the NFL is interested in him.
Yes.
But if he decides, I don't want to do the recruiting, especially depending on how they do, maybe if they don't do well in the playoffs, he says, screw this, I'm out. I'll go to the NFL. Or maybe if they win it all, it's like, cool, I won just like Harbaugh. I did it. Get me out of here. Walking away on a high note. No more recruiting. No more of this. I won. Let's go. But I think that an interesting name for Oregon, if he were to leave, would be Deion, because what could you do with one of the best recruiters with a open checkbook? And it makes sense for Deion in the fact that you're going to work for Nike too. And then you go in, get your signature shoe, have this whole marketing campaign where Nike gets to make you a star again because they want to make you a star because it makes it easier for them to recruit. And it all works together with Phil Knight and Nike and what they're able to put together and just have this gigantic pitch for him to bring him in. And that would be scary.
I agree. That's a horror show for the rest of college football, man. Talk about the cool factor. Deion, where, cool is currency in college football, and he's got tons of it. And he uses it to recruit. He spends it in recruiting. And then you're going to add that with Oregon, who's got a lot of cool factor with them too. And then the Nike, he got a sugar daddy and Phil Knight, who's reportedly ready to try to buy a national title before he dies, basically.
Right, shuffles off this mortal coil.
Yeah, right. Trying to be less crass with it, but yeah, before he dies, he's trying to buy a national title. And I feel him. If I was a billionaire, I'd do the same thing. That is a scary thought, man. I'm with you. I know the Florida thing also was pretty scary. People were mentioning Deion at Florida, at a powerhouse like that in the state that he's from. That's also pretty powerful. But I'm with you, man. Oregon, if Dan Lanning is indeed a true candidate for a head coaching job in the NFL and wants to take that job, that would be next level scary. Because Deion's superpower is his recruiting. Like, everybody wants to play for Deion. Like, there's, every kid's going to give Deion a chance to pitch him the program, right? Whatever the sales pitch is, you're going to sit down with Deion, and you're probably going to have, Deion, if he really, really wants you, it's a good chance that if he's at the right school, and I'm not talking about Colorado, it's different because Colorado's not for everybody, but if he goes to one of those big programs like in Oregon, they were talking about like a Florida, something like that, and Deion makes the sales pitch, it's a very different sales pitch than any other coach can make, because they can't say they are a Pro Football Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
None of them can, because none of them have ever been. He's the only one that can do it. He's the only one that can call Jerry Rice on his phone. He's the one that probably can text Barry Sanders, and he can send a video of yours to Lamar Jackson.
Well, no, and I mean,
what do you think of this kid?
When you talk about it, like when you bring up Jerry Rice, it's funny because like these kids today don't care about Jerry Rice, but
that's true.
When you're recruiting their parents care about Jerry Rice, and that's I mean, we know Darrell Royal was on the payroll in Texas for a long time, and it wasn't to talk to the kids.
Hey, man.
It was to talk to the parents when they were recruiting.
Well, you think VY is on there for? VY still is.
And that's you keep on the payroll. It's like we get the kids don't necessarily care as much. We have other people to talk to them. Bijan's going to talk to the kids. But when dad's like, well, I'm not sure. Well, Vince thinks he should be sure.
Yep. Vince, you can go hang out with VY for a while. Y'all can reminisce about old times. Nope, you're right about that. Because my dad was big on guys like Jerry Gray and guys like Johnny Johnson and Stanley Richards and the sheriff when I was being recruited by Texas. I didn't know who the hell those guys were. But my dad was enamored with them.
So Deion Sanders, not only is Deion Sanders talking to you, and you get to go to Deion Sanders' home because Deion don't travel. Come to Deion.
Deion don't travel. Isn't that crazy? That's wild. Yeah, all the recruits got to come to me. What is that? That's so unbelievable. Only one coach could ever do that. That's wild. But you're right. That's a great point, though. I'm with you 100%. All right, we come back. We'll get into who said that. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that. And we'll talk about it when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a One Artist Wednesday edition of the Rodcast, and that's when Patrick, my co-host, the Idillionaire, goes deep into the catalog of one specific artist, group, or band. And today, he is celebrating the 77th birthday of Joe Walsh, and he is the featured artist on One Artist Wednesday. So we appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. He also does a great job with the conversation starters, the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. And today he wants to know how many rushing yards will Texas have against Kentucky? And right now, 52% of you believe that Texas will have between 100 and 130 rushing yards against the University of Kentucky. And also, 31% of you say between 130 to 160. That's where I am, 130 to 160. Lee Patrick says they'll get over 160. And 11% of you believe Texas will have over 160 rushing yards. Go check that out at the Horn ATX on X. All right, time to play Who Said That? That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world. And based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that.
Man, I seen a dog. Anytime me and Q's on the field together, and he know I'm gonna get a handoff, he'll tell me I'm a dog. So I just when I seen him do that, pull that ball and run that dude over, I knew he was a dog also.
Trey Wisner saying Quinn's a dog. Got that dog in him. He got that dog. And he showed it on that fourth down conversion for the Longhorns to seal the victory over the Arkansas Razorbacks. There you go. Trey Wisner.
Yeah. That was,
They
you're right.
responded.
When you describe it as a culture play.
It was.
As much it was when he got up and he was healthy, like, okay, that was awesome.
Mhm.
It was a little scary in the moment when he gets up and he points first down, like, that was awesome. Don't do it again. But man, yeah, you saw Alfred Collins. They cut to his face on the sideline. You hear it from everybody in the post game. Like, that's my quarterback. That guy is fearless. He went out there. We got him the ball back, and he went down and got us a first down when we needed it to close out the game. Didn't put us back on the field. They were like, I don't want to put my helmet back on.
Guys don't put their helmet on. I want to take my shoulder pads off, man. Yeah, I already know. And like I said, I think the admiration was that in that moment, all that mattered to Quinn was getting that first down, converting, so this team could win, because conversion meant winning. And so there was no regard for his health and no regard for his injury history and how bad he had played that game so far and how inconsistent he was. Nope, just convert and just win, baby. And the players definitely appreciated that. And I appreciate you, Patrick. Thanks for all you do, brother. Appreciate all of your hard work and your effort. Thank you guys for listening out there. We appreciate you as well. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We'll be talking about it right here on the Rodcast. We love you guys. We mean that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. And until next time, hook 'em and peace.